Cheers, queers! What's on the big gay agenda today, Theora?
Today we are continuing our scene-by-scene breakdown of Blank the Series, and today we'll be finishing up the second half of Season 2, Episode 4.
Woo!
This episode should just be called Car Rides with the Nungs, because there's a lot of car rides with the Nungs in this episode. Like, so many car rides.
Well, I mean, they have a car this season. They have to use it.
I mean, it's before, like, Little Nun gets the car. Like, in this half, Little Nun gets a car, but before, it's, like, multiple car rides in Big Nung's car.
That's true.
Yeah, a lot of car rides this episode. Never noticed that before I was doing my notes, and I was like, another car scene? Okay.
But before we get into this episode, we do need to give a shout out to our big gay super supporters and above. So for our big gay
These
super
are
supporters,
our Patreon members.
Yeah.
What does this mean, Kaitlynn?
I'm sorry. We just started doing this. I'll get better at it, I promise. Okay, so our Patreon members at the big gay super supporter tier are Jay, Natalia, Miranda, Ian, Regina, and Monet. And then our Patreon supporter at our big gay family member tier is Dana. We appreciate and love you all, and thank you for joining our chaos crew.
Yeah, so we're going to start honoring the people who are above the $5 tier, basically, who for some reason love us enough to give us even more than $5 a month. So thank you all for your support, and we hope you like the extra bonus content you get on Patreon. We appreciate it.
It's random and weird, but that's who we are.
I mean, yes, you should know that by now. Speaking of random and weird, so something random and weird happened to us this week we filmed these in advance, so if you already know about this and told us, thank you. Apparently, the screenwriter for Blank the Series found this podcast. And if you're still listening, hi, thank you for still being here. Hello, we love you and your masterpiece that is Blank the Series. So the screenwriter started watching it, like, live tweeting one of our episodes, and I cried. Because, like, wow, first of all, I don't know how you found this podcast, but I'm glad you did, and some of what we were saying was on point, apparently, and, like, resonated, and they were just out here giving, like, BTS facts about writing this, which is incredible, because the adaptation is different. I mean, obviously, when you adapt something, it's going to be different. But there are extra scenes in the show that weren't in the novel, and so hearing, like, the thought process behind why certain scenes were in there and the kind of choices made from a writing perspective were really great. So thank you for sharing that with everybody. I learned a lot, especially about the Pride and Prejudice book, which we were on track with that. So confirmation that, like, apparently the book, if you didn't read all the tweets, I mean, go on our Twitter and you can find it, the OG threads, but apparently the book in the screenplay Little Dog was supposed to be reading, like, a Thai translation of Romeo and Juliet, so Old English translated into Thai. And so when Little Dog was like, having trouble reading this, it's because it's in Old English, like, translated into Thai, so, like, it is hard to read. But I guess the prop didn't match, like, the script, so that's why it looks like a Pride and Prejudice cover, but it's like she was actually reading Romeo and Juliet. So that was great. Thank you for that. The validation.
Yes, like, so many things. Every single tweet, because I just kept refreshing, because the screenwriter didn't tag us in everything, but I was like, oh, I could basically see the trajectory of the tweets going with the episode. I'm like, wow, you're really listening. It's not like you fell off halfway, like 30 minutes in. No, I'm pretty sure they went on to another episode as well.
Yes, no, it was multiple episodes because of what they were tweeting. I hope you
got to sleep that night. But yeah, it was really cool to know that our analysis is, like, correct in some instances, and knowing that, I don't know, like, that it makes a difference to people. It's just, I always can't believe that people like us.
Yeah, like, first of all, if you're here, thank you. Whoever is listening, we appreciate it. And just, again, it's nice to see people interacting with a piece of media and what it means to different people. Like, in general, that's why we have the podcast, honestly, is to highlight why these pieces of media matter and how they affect people and why they should be appreciated, and to as paying homage to those who made it happen. Because oftentimes we focus on like what we see on screen, so we're hyper focusing on like the actors, but they're two people out of like hundreds, if not thousands, depending on the production, of people who made this thing a thing. So like, thank you for adapting this, because that's the first step. The first step is you got to take the source material and make it into something before you can even cast anybody. So like, we're here because of you, so thank you if you're still listening.
Yes, we really appreciate it. We really appreciate everybody listening to countless hours of these things, because you are listening to the whole thing, and I love it. I love when people use my word at the end. I'm like, oh, yay, they listened. Anyway.
All right. So with that, let's continue on the journey and get into our first car ride of the episode. So the Nungs embark on their first driving lesson, because where we left off, Little Nung made the deal with Chet where she's like, I don't want all of the things you're offering. I'll take half of it, which is the vehicle, but like Big Nung is going to teach me how to drive. And Big Nung's like, son of a bitch. So here we are at the first driving lesson. And we learn in this scene that Little Nung is the type of person who needs background noise in order to concentrate, which Big Nung does not relate to. She's like, what do you mean? You have to focus on driving. And Little Nung's like, no, I need like noise so that I can focus. So we found something they actually don't have in common.
And it also shows how brains work differently, even when people seem so similar. And it also makes me think of that thing that people make fun of where you have to like turn down the volume in order to see better. And I think that's definitely Big Nung.
My wife does that when she's driving. She turns. I'm like, okay.
Okay, I'm thinking. Sure. So if your wife does it, I think it's maybe with the people who have an inner monologue, because everything is so loud in your head that you need to be able. It's too much. So I relate too. But I think Big Nung relates too.
I think she's on, I don't know. But anyway, but the problem with this is it's not just background music, because like once Little Nung picks her like radio station and then like is immediately like entranced and not like she like becomes engrossed in like the show and not driving. So I'm like, Little Nung, was this helpful or was it not? Anyway, so we'll get there in a second. But anyway, Little Nung's like, okay, like, can I, she asks Big Nung permission. Like, well, can I listen to something? It'll help me concentrate, basically. And Big Nung's like, I mean, it's your car. You do whatever the hell you want. Because Big Nung is a respectful girlfriend.
Yeah, and this is when we should have gotten to the, whoa, 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 whoa.
If this was My Marvelous Dream Is You, that's what would have came on the radio, because that happened in that show, because Idol Factory is very proud of Gap the series. As they should be.
As they should be.
As they should be. Okay, so anyway, Big Nung's like, look, it's your car, you do whatever the hell you want, you know? That's the benefit of owning your own cars, you can do whatever you want. Little Nung's like, perfect. So she turns on her favorite, like, DJ talk show. And again, like I said, she's absorbed in the episode. And if you, like, watch her, she's, like, seriously fixating on whatever the hell it is they're saying. And they're talking about, like, relationship drama, basically. And Big Nung is trying to process what is happening. Because, first of all, she's listening and she's like, wait, what is this? And then she's like, Little Nung, did you turn this on? Like, in my brain, she looks at her to be like, did you mean to turn this on? And Little Nung is like, seriously, like, nodding her head and absorbing every word. And Big Nung's like, this can't be happening. Like, what the fuck is happening right now? Like, what is this? Who are you?
Hilarious. Like, no, she was probably expecting the worst, like, kids' music these days, kind of. And then she just hears people talking. And, but to be fair, Little Nung never said she was going to put music on. And, okay. But also, I don't understand why Little Nung was immediately focused into this, because it was in the middle of the story and had no context.
No.
Like, you would have to, like, try to figure stuff out first, but she thought, like, she looked like she understood the story immediately. I mean, she never does need context. Like, she's all heart. She never had context when she first started going after Big Nung either, so she's just, like, fully into it immediately.
Well, I think she's, like, hyper-focusing because she's trying to figure out what's going on. So she's, like, trying to focus on every detail to get into it. And Big Nung's just like, is this really happening? Like, what? So Big Nung learns the hard way that Little Nung's favorite radio station is a relationship advice show where the hosts invite a guest to talk about their issue, and then the hosts advise them on how to handle it. Which is weird to Big Nung because she was raised in an old school environment where everybody deals with their problems by not dealing with them. You just shut yourself away behind closed doors and just project perfection onto the outside world. That was the conceal, don't feel environment she was raised in. Meanwhile, Little Nung, outside of her family, has learned the importance of mental health and asking for help from the outside people, basically. So, like, you've mentioned multiple times, Kaitlynn, like, probably from media, probably this talk show. It's probably why she's trying to, like, engross herself so quickly into it to be like, what is the advice? And, how can I, pick up some tips? I assume this is where she got most of them, was this, like, relationship advice show, the novels, maybe Friends. She didn't really have a lot of friends, so maybe
yeah, I think it would just be the novels and this. She probably listened to this a lot to feel like she wasn't alone.
Right, exactly. I don't see her as, like, a huge internet person, but, like, yeah, I can see her, like, from media.
I don't see her as a TV person either, so.
I would assume she'd have to stream stuff because, like, her grandmother's not letting her have a TV. Yeah, that's a distraction. That's yeah, because, like, let us not forget that while we're here with Little Nung now, where she has Big Nung and she has a friend group, like, Little Nung most of her life was just very isolated and alone because of how her grandmother treated her. She's paying for the crimes of Pinkfa, basically. And I imagine that, like, she one day stumbled upon this radio station somehow and felt way less alone by hearing, just people talk about their problems, and she probably felt it was relatable on some level. And I think maybe that's how it became her favorite station. Like, she felt less alone listening to it, and so it became something she kept doing and was like, wow, I want to be a part of this, And I think maybe that's like it's a pay it forward thing where she's like, I want to be a DJ on this show so that, like, I can help other people who felt alone, like, as a way to, like, heal her inner child in a way.
I really like that. I love that. She's adorable.
It's something she would do, Yeah.
It definitely would be.
Yeah. But Big Nung, it isn't privy to all this information. She's just perplexed by this radio station because she just doesn't understand it because trauma, okay? But Little Nung doesn't understand Big Nung's trauma as much as she should, and so she instead calls Big Nung out for being an old person. She's like, wow, like, your outdated way of thinking about this, what are you, an old auntie or whatever?
The worst comment she could have made.
Ooh, and Big Nung does not like this at all. Like, she gets really defensive. Like, the first time Little Nung calls her old, like, knocking on her age, Big Nung, like, crosses her arms. Like, she's starting to put walls up, which we haven't seen her do with Little Nung in quite some time. So, like, not a good sign that Big Nung's, like, feeling defensive from this comment.
She truly looks hurt by it. And, like, they just had a conversation like this. I believe Little Nung said she would stop saying things like that. So now we're back to doing this. And I feel like that has to hurt even more as well.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And so Big Nung, who's feeling hurt, starts grilling Little Nung on her choice of career path. And she's like, wait a minute. So, like, when you said you wanted to be a DJ, what you really meant is that you wanted to host a relationship advice show and just listen to other people's problems? Like, that's your job? And so, like, because, like, I don't think Big Nung understands. Like, that's part of the problem. She's like, I don't really, because, like, in her brain, she's like, why would you ever tell a stranger about your problems? Have we ever seen her tell a stranger about her problems? No. She's always talking to people that she's related to, Sam, and basically Mon. They're the same person. And then let's go to her interaction with Juan Viva, like a very close friend. Like, Big Nung couldn't even openly talk about it with Juan Viva, somebody who knows her extremely well. So, like, I think Big Nung cannot empathize with the situation of, like, why would you ever tell a stranger about your problems? Like, you're not supposed to tell outsiders about your inner problems. I just think she genuinely doesn't understand that. Not because, like, of her age, but because of the way she was brought up as a child and traumatized. And Little Nung, I think, is just like, wow, you're being... I think she's probably coming off the cusp of, like, the conversation where she was backed into a corner by Chet and her grandmother for taking the car. And I think she's feeling a little bit defensive off of that, because she's like, why is everybody treating me like a child? Why does nobody understand me? And blah, blah, blah. And so I think that, like, Big Nung's comment is, like, triggering that part of her that was already being triggered by, like, being in that house and, like, being treated like that, because they were treating her like a child, weren't they?
Yeah, no, this is definitely, like, both of their traumas coming up to play.
Right.
And because they, it affects them so differently, it's like they're just gonna bump heads right now.
Right. Yeah, like, they're not on the same page because they're both being triggered in different ways. So Little Nung, who's frustrated, casually insults Big Nung's age again. And she, like, multiple times, where she's like, why don't you understand the younger generation? And then she's like, ugh, Big Nung, let's just get on with the driving lesson because you sound like an old auntie. And, like, that's the nail in the coffin, is that one right there. Because she does call her Auntie Nung, but it's meant as, like, a we're close thing, not a you're old thing. And really what this conversation, from Big Nung's perspective, why it's here, is it's to reinforce, again, their age gap, but more importantly, like, Big Nung's insecurity about the age gap. Because Little Nung is just casually saying these things. She's not doing it to hurt Big Nung. She's frustrated. And so she's just saying things. Versus Big Nung looks more and more heartbroken as this conversation starts going on. And so I think this is when Big Nung is starting to get back into her head and kind of close off a little bit and start overthinking everything. Because if you think about it, up until this point, like, the Juan Viva conversation triggered her, like the art, you know, in the art gallery with the friends being like, I don't know, that age gap. And, like, she started getting triggered there, being like, wow, other people can see our age gap and other people are going to judge us. But this one hurts the most because it's like Little Nung judging her in a way. Like, it's kind of how Big Nung is taking it. She's like, wow, the age gap never seemed to be an issue between us when we were alone, but now it's like an issue in Big Nung's brain. So, like, I feel like that realization hurts her a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's completely understandable. This poor girl is, first of all, they're both going through a lot, but this is her biggest insecurity, and now it's getting thrown back into her face by the person she loves.
Right.
And it's, oh gosh, I want to hug her. I know I say this like every episode, but I would just really like to hug.
I mean, yes. Big Nung really needs a hug in this scene, though.
Yes.
Yeah, because, like, Little Nung doesn't see the spiraling that's starting to happen with Big Nung. And, like, it's not coming out of nowhere, and it's not really solely about these casual comments Little Nung is making. Like, let us remember, we just had a scene in this episode where Big Nung was reminded that Little Nung is young and attractive in the eyes of people her own age. They were internet stalking her, trying to take photos of her, like, she's a catch. Then we were reminded by Little Nung's family that they see Big Nung as a stepmother and not a suitor because of her age.
Yeah.
So, like, she's already, like, on the verge of being triggered. And like you said, to have Little Nung, of all people, like, validate, like, for Big Nung to have the validation that, like, Little Nung also sees her as somebody older that she can't relate to. That's really the issue. Where Little Nung's like, wow, why can't you relate to me in this scene? That's so frustrating. You know? And the issue is that, like, Little Nung doesn't take these comments seriously. Like, she's teasing Big Nung and using the age to tease her because, like, that's her role. She likes to get a rise out of Big Nung, but, like, she doesn't see that, like, this is, like, a huge insecurity for Big Nung, and, like, she's taking this seriously, what she's saying, and starting to spiral in her brain about the relationship.
The teasing only works if it's not something that will truly hurt the person, because then it's not teasing. It's like going into, not bullying, like, this isn't really bullying, but it is going into bullying territory because you know it hurts someone. She's just not thinking that it is gonna hurt her.
Correct, that's the problem. But in a second, like, because she asks Big Nung, she's like, because Big Nung's like, okay, can we just get on with the driving lesson? This sort of pissed me off. And Little Nung's like, why? Does it hurt your self-esteem? Like, because that's what she's doing. She's like Miss Perfect over here, like, trying to just, like, point out little things to be like, yeah, you're not so perfect, blah, blah, blah. But then Little Nung finally realizes that, like, Big Nung is hurt by this because Big Nung just like sighs and is just like whatever. Like she doesn't fight her back. She's just like getting annoyed and like retreating into herself. So once Little Nung realizes that, she like keeps up a teasing tone, but like switches gears from like teasing Big Nung about the age gap to like reassuring her playfully that like the age gap doesn't matter to her, like, which it doesn't. It really doesn't. That's why, like, to her, she's like, I can say these things and it doesn't mean anything because it doesn't mean anything to me. But Big Nung's like, well, this triggers me, so please stop doing this. And like, yeah, Kaylynn's a good point to be like, she told her to stop doing this, and like, here she is doing it again.
Like they had this conversation.
I know. This is the age gap episode.
That's the annoying part because like they did talk about this. And, like, usually Big Nung, again, she's emotionally mature, so she will register it and file it away, but I guess when she's just in this playful mood, it's easier to forget those things and just immediately start teasing. So, like, I understand that to an extent, but it's a sucky situation.
Yeah, agreed. So, like, so Little Nung is trying to reassure her, like, hey, like, I'm just teasing you, like, it literally doesn't matter to me. She's like, I think she said, even if you were older, I would still love you. Like, I don't care. Like, it doesn't matter to me, which I think Little Nung is like, come on, it's fine. And I think Big Nung is like, oh, God, that'd be even worse. Like, what do you mean? But she eventually, like, visibly relaxes after Little Nung says this, and I'm glad that we get to a place where, you know, in this moment, it would have been really easy for Big Nung to dismiss what Little Nung is saying and be like, I don't even believe you right now, but whatever. But in this moment, like, she listens to Little Nung and, like, processes what she's saying and then relaxes. So to me, it's like growth of Big Nung, where instead of just being in denial about whatever it is Little Nung's saying when she expresses her feelings, she actually, like, takes it seriously too. So, like, there is that good part of this conversation where, like, Big Nung freaks out first. Her response is to freak out about the age gap. Little Nung is, like, joking about it because she doesn't see it as an issue. Once she realizes Big Nung sees it as an issue, her immediately reassures Big Nung, it doesn't matter to me. We're the only two people in this relationship, really, that have to deal with the age gap, and, like, I don't care. She's like, even if you were older, I would still, I love you. It has nothing to do with your age. And then Big Nung finally, like, processes that instead of hiding. And then, like, we resolve the issue. So, communication. And this is a pattern we're going to see again when they're back in this conversation at the end of the episode. It goes out the same beats, right? Freak out, teasing, talk it through seriously, and then resolve it together.
I had a slightly different read for this. I mean, I think there was always going to be a part of her that will be insecure no matter what about the age gap.
Oh, yeah.
We've talked about that before. But here, I feel like she would just rather go back to what they are supposed to be doing than continue the conversation. Like, maybe a part of her is, like, accepting that Little Nung does not see this as an issue, but I think she just really wants to forget about it right now and just, like, not have to keep continuing to talk about this.
I think that's valid. I think that's a valid read. I would add that, like, think about the situation. They're alone right now. It's easier for Big Nung to accept a lot of these things rather than be in denial about it when they're alone. So they don't have an audience. So that's the other thing, that when there's other people involved, that's when Big Nung has a harder time processing and, like, being true to her feelings versus just denying, evading. Because, like, in this scene, it's also demonstrating that, like, Little Nung is Big Nung's biggest grounding force, and she is able to pull Big Nung out of these dark thoughts, like, pretty easily and into, like, the light, so to speak. And I do love that. They do definitely have that dynamic. And, like, Little Nung does help balance Big Nung. Plus, in the scene, Little Nung's, like, emotional maturity really shines, which we talk about all the time. Because having differences of opinions on subjects like radio show preferences and careers doesn't really affect how much we love people. And, like, it's okay to disagree on stuff. Like, at the heart of it, that's kind of how this age gap thing came up. But personally, I think Little Nung owed Big Nung an apology. Because, like, she clearly upsets her every time she brings up this age gap thing. And she did apologize and promise not to do it last time. And, like, here she is, like, dismissing it a little bit.
she 1,000% should have apologized. Like, she's really good at figuring out Big Nung's emotions, so she clearly saw that she was upset by this.
Right.
I mean, even if you're going to do it again, keep apologizing.
Right, yeah, exactly. Just apologize to her. All right, so then Big Nung, to your point, ends this age gap talk by suggesting they actually just start the driving lesson because, like, they're going to have to report back to Chet, the grandmother. So, like, we probably should actually do this.
Also, she needs to make some sort of progress with driving.
Right, so before they get started, Big Nung confirms that Little Nung remembers the basics and then asks her, do you feel confident in this? She's like, you understand, drive, reverse. So I love that, like, she checks in with Little Nung to make sure she feels comfortable. Because this is 100% not how the driving lesson with Chet would have gone down.
Oh, definitely not. And also, the Prindle can be very scary and confusing at first, so you need to make sure you are doing it right, because if you put on the wrong letter, you could go flying into a tree. Just saying.
Don't do that.
If you know what I mean by Prindle, I love you, and let me know where that's from in the comments. Okay. If Chet was here doing the driving lesson, he would just be in the passenger seat with Little Nung and be like, okay, let's go. And Little Nung would be like, what do I do first? But he would just expect her to know already. He doesn't know how to teach someone.
No. And he wouldn't check it. Like, Big Nung made a point to be like, do you feel confident before we even get started? Like, I love that she asks her that specifically. Like, Chet would never ask her that. Like, he would go through the instructions and be like, go. I just told you, go. Kind of thing. And, like, so.
And then he would say the same instructions over and over.
Correct.
And not know to, like, reframe it if she's not understanding it.
Or ask her. Repeat it back to me. Because that's what Big Nung does. She's like, okay, what is what? Like, repeat it back to me. Like good teacher. For somebody who hates teaching children, good job, Big Nung. Because she has all the patience in the world with Little Nung. It's because she cares about her. If this was anybody else, it would go like Chet's lesson. Or Big Nung would be like, come on, just go. And they'd be like, you didn't tell me anything. Anyway. So, but anyway, here's how the rest of this goes. So Little Nung doesn't instantly get the hang of driving, which does frustrate Big Nung. For all her patience, she does get frustrated pretty easily. So, like Little Nung is, like, swerving all over the road and then, like, stops short and...
I thought this was very relatable. Because when I first started driving, I would keep going with the wheel like this. Because I thought that's how you kept the car on track. And, like, as a kid, when you're, like, pretending to drive, this is what you do. So it's just... some things are just, like, not clicking in the beginning.
Yeah, but I mean, she's trying, but Big Nung is, was triggered earlier in the conversation. Everybody's a little triggered in this, leading up to this driving lesson, so, like, they're kind of on edge for different reasons, and then kind of, like, get into a fight. So Big Nung snaps and asks Little Nung why she doesn't get it. She's like, this is simple. Like, keep the wheel straight, start and stop. It's not that complicated.
I think Big Nung needs to take a pedagogy, I think that's how you say it, class before she becomes the art instructor for the workshops at the gallery, because her teaching could use a little bit of work. Just saying.
I mean, anyway. So, like, okay. So Little Nung points out that she's like, look, this is literally my first day driving. This is my first day. Like, I'm learning. Like, that's how this works. But this is Big Nung's childhood trauma. That's really the problem. That's not really a teaching style thing. Because back in her day, she was expected to be perfect immediately, which is how she remembers her first driving day. Because she says to Little Nung, she's like, well, the first day I learned driving, I already got the hang of it, like, immediately. And it's like, Big Nung. Hindsight is not 20/20. I'm sure you fumbled until you got the hang of it too. But, like, again, she's Miss Perfect. She's supposed to be perfect. So she's like, why can't you be perfect too immediately? That's how I remember my driving lesson, because... trauma. She's being triggered. And Little Nung, I don't think enjoys being compared to Big Nung's childhood. And she's like, listen, I'm not perfect the way you are perfect. Like, I'm not you, Big Nung. And so Little Nung, who doesn't appreciate being held to this impossible standard by her perfect girlfriend, so she ditches the driving lesson and walks away because she's pissed off, and, like, understandable. So Big Nung gets out of the car and is like, Nung, what the hell? Because Big Nung, at this point, is fully triggered in all the ways and super frustrated. So she said she's going to count to 3, and if Little Nung doesn't come back, she's going to leave. And this fails in spectacular fashion because Big Nung doesn't even get to 3 before she's like, oh, fine, I'll make up with you. It's like, girl, can't you? Because she knows she's wrong.
But back to the age thing that like just happened. This is another way of the showing the age gap and her treating Little Nung like a child because this is something you do with children to make them listen. So both of them right now are really showing the age gap. And yeah.
Yeah, but also like Big Nung is acting like the child in this scene because she's triggered and emotional and acting irrationally, and Little Nung is acting rational because she's like, I'm not gonna fight with you, there's no point right now, you're being irrational. So she leaves the situation before it can get worse. She's like, I'm gonna leave because there's no point in talking to you, you can't be reasoned with right now. So like, yeah, in a way it's showing their emotional age gap because Big Nung is the stunted one when it comes to emotional maturity. So that's why Little Nung leaves. She's like, this is pointless, we're just gonna scream at each other for no reason. I don't even want this car. So she's just like,
I didn't want to be here.
Yeah. So Big Nung, to my point that like Big Nung is acting emotionally immature, what does she do? She gets super frustrated and kicks the front tire, which hurts like hell. And apparently rips her toenail clean off, which is, ow. Girl, how did you kick this tire?
Yeah, how does that even happen?
I don't know.
She like... Because, like, she has a shoe on, too.
It must be a very thin shoe.
And, like, what'd she do? Kick it and then, like, put her foot down? I don't know.
I don't understand the mechanics of this. But, like, again, to the point, she's throwing a tantrum. Like, it kicks the car. And I think that, like, the pain of that, because, ow, helps her process the fact that she's being unreasonable. So she decides, fine, I'll make it up to you. Because she realizes in this moment, I'm wrong. I'm the wrong one right now. So Big Nung hobbles painfully into the car, which is objectively hilarious, and then drives off to catch Little Nung. So Little Nung is just walking along the road, just like calmly, because like, fuck that situation. So Big Nung rolls up and she tries to plead with her to get in the car. And then she's like, come on, no, get in the car. Come on, get in the car. And then Big Nung starts getting triggered in a different way. Because let us all recall 203. After a minute of pleading, then suddenly she gets extremely worried. And she's like, where are you going to go? Your phone and your wallet are in the car. Like, what do you mean? Where are you going? Because she starts getting worried that Little Nung is just going to disappear. And she won't be able to contact her. So, like, this starts to get scary for Big Nung. Because she's like, where are you going? Please get in the car. So she gets more and more desperate going forward. It's one of those situations, like if you remember in Gap the series, like the only time Sam would ever fight for Mon is when she's actively losing Mon. So in this scenario, Big Nung, I think, is getting triggered that I'm about to lose her for real. So she's willing to do everything to keep her and like be as honest as humanly possible. So she's like still rolling up next to her. Little Nung stops and then is royally pissed off and turns to Big Nung and she's like, listen, I'm gonna go anywhere but here. Like, I'm not gonna get yelled at by you. And just like, no, I'm not your punching bag, Nung. Like, I'm just gonna leave. And Little Nung might be younger and less experienced in this scenario, but that doesn't mean she's gonna sit around and be infantilized by Big Nung. And like, good for you, Little Nung. You're right. You shouldn't be treated like a child by your girlfriend. That's fucked up.
That is true.
But then 0.0003 seconds later, Big Nung says she's sorry. Like, she caves immediately. She's like, I'm sorry, this was me. And then Little Nung stops and gets some of her confidence back. And she's like, I couldn't quite hear you. What'd you say? Can you yell it louder for the people in the back? And the translation of this is like, who has the power in this scenario? You or me, Big Nung. You were just flaunting your perfection a minute ago, but here you are groveling immediately. So like, I'm sorry, who's in charge here? Who was wrong? Who was right? And Big Nung's answer is you're right, this was my fault. Like, and she says she's sorry again. And she's like, I'm sorry. Like, and after playing her little games, that's when Little Nung's demeanor completely changes because she's like, okay, she apologized not once, but twice. And so that's when Little Nung approaches the car. And Big Nung at first is confused because I think she was willing to do all the groveling possible, but all she said was, I'm sorry. And so she's like, why did you forgive me that easily? I was being a dick. And Little Long tells her, it's like, well, it's because you don't apologize to anybody. So I know you mean it when you say it. You're not the type of person that like throws that word around carelessly to just win arguments. She's like, you don't ever say it unless you mean it. So you said it twice. I know you really mean it. And you only say it to me.
That's true. She also just does not like admitting when she's wrong. Like,
No.
she'll try to overcompensate to make up for it, but this is the quickest she's ever admitted that she was wrong. I mean, like, I'm sorry was just a cherry on top as well. Twice. You got 2 cherries.
Got 2 cherries. I mean, if you think about it, that's part of her trauma because perfect people are never wrong. So, like, she was never allowed to admit these things. So, like, this is, again, like, her growth, thanks to Little Nung, is to be able to, like, not just always put on the mask of perfection and have to, like, double down on that mask. She can just be honest. And so this is an honest moment. And Little Nung is basically saying, I appreciate your being honest with me. Like, people get emotional and have tantrums. That's just kind of life. And, like, but the fact that you were able to, like, say you're sorry, chase me down, and, like, mean it, that's important. So, bottom line is that Big Nung shows Little Nung how much she cares and how special Little Nung is by saying she's sorry multiple times and admitting when she's wrong. And it's because that Big Nung is so desperate to maintain their relationship that she's willing to be completely honest, which she doesn't do with anybody else, because usually she has those emotional walls up and like, which is kind of like what she was doing in the car because she was defensive. So she had walls, the defense were up, and Little Nung's like, fuck this. So when she left and Big Nung thought she was losing her, that's when the walls all came down. And she's like, fine, whatever, I'm sorry. Like, I was, scared. She's scared. She's scared.
Yeah. Okay, so Big Nung tells Little Nung that she is mischievous. And that makes Little Nung smile. Because Little Nung isn't mischievous. I mean, she is. But she is being a mastermind here. And she knew words were not going to work with Big Nung because sometimes it just doesn't work. Because Big Nung was so frustrated. So she orchestrated this whole thing to get Big Nung to realize how ridiculous and unrealistic she was being. I mean, that is the definition of mastermind, right?
Yeah. But I love, that's her response. You're mischievous. Like, what is she, Annan from the Loyal Pen? She kind of is mischievous. She's the mischievous one. You're so mischievous. But you're right. This is more her knowing Big Nung extremely well and showing that, basically. And so Big Nung takes this in and gets really bashful and then asks Little Nung if they've made up for real by extending her pinky, which is really cute. She's like, are we good? Are we good? So
yeah, they're legally good now.
They are legally good. And Little Nung is smiling so big, like she can't handle the cuteness of this. But wait, it keeps going. So after Little Nung completes the pinky promise contract, Big Nung asks if we can go home. Not back to your grandmother's house, not back to my palace, but she says, can we go home? And Little Nung gives this cheeky look like, yeah, that's right, I live with you. And you just admitted under a pinky promise that we are legally U-hauled by Thai law. So good job, Big Nung. You just admit you guys live together. Well done.
She gave another cookie.
She got another cookie. I don't know the time, again, what is time in these shows? Because we go from this scene to nighttime is the next scene at the grandmother's house. Now it's plausible that the sun set, even though it didn't look like it lighting-wise, on the way back.
I don't like the day to nighttime because I'm like, there's no sunsets ever in these shows.
Right. Or indication of twilight. So, like, yes, it's plausible. They went from this driving lesson straight to Little Nung's grandmother's house and then had dinner. And it's nighttime when they're having dinner. But I don't think that's what happened. I think they made a pit stop at the palace before they went back. Because, like, the driving lesson was probably supposed to go on for longer. And why would these two go back there early to be around Little Nung's family when they can be alone? So I think what Big Nung is asking is, like, can we go home? Like, can we just be together for a little bit and not fight? Because Little Nung's reaction is, like, cheeky to this. So my alternative read is Little Nung is like, she's trying to make this up with me with sexy times, and I'm not going to say no to that. So I think that they had a pit stop home so Big Nung could make it up to Little Nung a little bit more. And then they went to the dinner with the family. After the Nungs go home, air quote, and do whatever, air quote, they end up back at Little Nung's grandmother's to return the car. It's nighttime, and since we have no idea what time it is in the show, my headcanon is that they fooled around the Bua Palace before coming to family dinner, like I said. So here they are, trying to be not dating in the middle of her family dinner. So Little Nung's grandmother is like, so Big Nung, can you explain again how you ripped your toenail off during a driving lesson? Because that's kind of weird. Like, no judgment, you're royalty, but also judgment, because like, what?
How do you do that?
Literally, that's why she's asking. Okay, so before we get into this weird stuff, let's talk real quick about the seating arrangement at the dinner, because this is really different. So it's just 4 people. It's Little Nung's grandmother, Chet, Big Nung, Little Nung. And it's interesting because there's no head of the table at this seating arrangement. So it's like Little Nung and her grandmother sitting next to each other, and then across is Chet and Big Nung. So there's no, it reads to me like it's adults at the table with no power imbalance. So it's like equal-ish. There's still a social hierarchy, but equal-ish playing field. At least there's no head of table kind of thing, which is interesting. So it's more like a family dinner than like a welcome to my house, I'm the head of the house kind of thing. So I think it's like kind of demonstrating their family dinner. And Big Nung's there. Okay.
Big Nung's part of the family, just not
right.
the way they think.
Right, which makes Big Nung uncomfortable in a minute. Okay, so I assume, where do we get this question about the toenail? I assume Big Nung limped into the house, which is why Little Nung's grandmother is like, what happened during the driving lesson that you were injured? And so, on the spot, Big Nung makes up a lie, or does she, about what happened? Where she says, I tripped over a stone. So it's time to play another round of metaphor time for their relationship. So to me, all right, so a stone, like what is a stone? It's a hard, unmovable object, right? Or you can read it as something stubborn, okay? Like unmovable, hard-headed, blah, blah, blah. So I think, okay, so on the surface, like I tripped over a stone. So in the metaphor, is Big Nung comparing Little Nung to a stone, right? I tripped over something stubborn, Little Nung. Because think about it, Little Nung is tough, she is stubborn, and not easily swayed from her positions. Hence, Little Nung fleeing from the driving lesson during that fight, right?
She could definitely be a stone.
She's definitely a stone. Or, counterpoint, is Big Nung comparing herself to the stone. Okay, so Big Nung tripped over her own stubbornness during the driving lesson, which is what led to the fight. Okay.
Or were there 2 stones?
They're both stones. Nung squared. All right. So Chet comments, he's like, Big Nung, that's weird because you're not clumsy. Like, you don't trip over anything. You're perfect or whatever. And first of all, shut the fuck up, Chet. No one asked for your opinion. There's that.
Seriously. And also, he would literally not know this. Okay, in my head, Big Nung was always ditching him. And I think Chet spent 75% of the time when he was with Big Nung trying to find her. And for some reason, she was just happened to be at lesbian bars, DJing, right?
All right, yeah, so, like, I like that. In all reality, I think he spent most of their courting with the grandmam, the way Kirk, when he was courting Sam, spent most of his time with the grandmam, because she's the one setting this all up. He didn't spend actual time with Big Nung. But also, like, it's reinforcing that Big Nung's perfect, right? Perfect people aren't clumsy. She's graceful and that kind of stuff. So that's what he's really trying to say. I didn't need him to say anything, but I think that's what's happening. So, shut up, Chet. This is a conversation between Big Nung and Little Nung using metaphors. Get out of my metaphor.
I would like him to lose his voice.
That'd be great. Okay, so, like, Big Nung gets nervous for a second because I think she's afraid she got caught in the lie, because then Little Nung chimes in. And without thinking about it too much, proceeds to banter with Big Nung in their typical teasing manner. Like, typically when they're alone and not in front of family. So Little Nung says, yeah, Big Nung, you have to be more careful next time so you don't trip over a stone again. So, because I think she is like, that didn't happen. And also, this is a metaphor. Let me tease your ass, because I know how to read between the Big Nung lines here. So what she's saying is, next time, Big Nung, don't pick stupid fights with me and throw a temper tantrum, and you'll walk away with your toes intact. So Big Nung then looks at Little Nung, because she's not pleased that Little Nung understands the subtext of the lie, and is low-key calling her out in front of everyone. Because, like, she looks at her like...
Little Nung is also basically laughing at the end of saying that, too. Which is hilarious.
She's like, maybe don't trip over, quote, stones, your own bullshit, and then we won't get into fights.
Meanwhile, Chet's like, what?
No, literally. So that's the private conversation going on between the Nungs. Meanwhile, everybody else at the table is not tuned in to the lovers' quarrel that's happening here. Especially Little Nung's grandmother, because once again, she's appalled that Little Nung is talking back to the ML at the table. And she's like, Little Nung, you're being rude right now. Like, but she's just, again, like we've mentioned in other episodes, that like they've been spending so much time together that just like their natural way of talking to each other is just, it comes out. Like they're, like Little Nung is not used to wearing these polite masks around Big Nung. She just says what she's feeling, and Big Nung gets grumpy at her, but like, you know, they know they're teasing most of the time, unless it's about the age gap and when Big Nung's getting triggered. But for the most part, she's like, yeah, I should expect this from you. So like, it doesn't mean anything, but like, think about the table. They're like, why are you talking back to your mother figure or whatever? So like the grandmother's like, how dare you? Chet also just isn't listening, so he doesn't know what's going on. So like, fuck him for the scene. Okay, now think about where we're at. So now, position of power, head of family is like, wow, Little Nung, you're being rude. You're in the wrong in this scene, in this conversation. And Big Nung could easily lean into this, because she's older, and tease Little Nung back, but she doesn't. What does she do? Instead, Big Nung says, it's okay. Little Nung is right. And when it cuts back to Little Nung, she's like quietly gloating while the grandmother processes this, because they're having a private conversation with this lie, and Big Nung's admitting, again, I'm sorry, you were right, and this is a consequence of my own action. Which is, that's big. That's mature behavior, Big Nung. Good job.
Good job, Big Nung.
I love that she defends Little Nung constantly in front of her family, where, like, they're trying to put her down. She's like, no, let her talk. She's right.
She's an adult. Speak your mind, Little Nung.
She's an adult. And the grandmother perceives this exchange as Big Nung expressing her platonic feelings for Little Nung, and comments that makes her happy.
But, like, the grandmother's attitude has changed so much since she learned who Big Nung is. Like, Big Nung has the most power in this house. Mm-hmm. For now.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, the grandmother is and always will be a social climber. So she's like, whatever Big Nung says, because Big Nung is the queen. Yeah, she doesn't actually like Big Nung or actually care about Big Nung. It's all about what Big Nung represents and how she's an opportunist like Chet. She's like, well, if my granddaughter's hanging around the queen, our family could continue to climb socially. So whatever, keep her happy. I don't even care what's going on. So that's why she's like, Big Nung, Little Nung, don't be rude to the queen. It's not so anyway. Some things don't change, I guess.
Nope.
Okay. So while this exchange is happening, like, again, the grandmother's like, I'm happy you love my daughter platonically or whatever. And Little Nung looks shyly over at Big Nung because she knows Big Nung loves her the most in the world. And I bet Little Nung, if she could, would start singing a dress right now. But she can't. And then Chet would... Imagine her actually doing that.
But just picture, like, a musical episode, kind of. Where
that'd be great.
It's like a musical and she does start doing it, but no one else is aware. And it's kind of like, I mean, maybe put Reverse for You as a crossover, and then she learns to stop time, and like, but she pulls, the whole thing. I could just see, I would laugh. I would love an alternate universe of seeing that. Anyway, continue.
They should have a music episode because they can both sing.
Yeah.
But anyway, that would go down.
They should have a musical show.
They should.
Just like, yeah. Okay, continue.
Anyway, if she did start singing dress, Chet wouldn't understand what was going on because he wouldn't listen to the words. And then the grandmother, I think, would be like, I mean, I guess you do take off close eventually. That's part of the process. I would take her a while to figure out what the hell's going on. And then meanwhile, Big Nung is red as a tomato, sitting there like, shut the fuck up, little Nung. Anyway, it would be terrible for
She'd
Big
be
Nung.
looking over at the grandmother and Chet being like, are they getting it?
I mean, she'd be like slowly like putting the napkin down, getting ready to bolt, like when they finally put it together.
And then she starts singing the bolter.
And Chet's like, did you want singing lessons? Like, what is this about? Anyway, it would just be the worst. Okay, so speaking of Chet, so Chet pivots this conversation. It goes from great job, Big Nung, for loving my granddaughter, to Little Nung being like, she's my wife, to Chet pivoting the conversation into Little Nung's education. First asking, how's school? Gives her zero time to answer the question before his second question, who's hitting on you? Like, do you actually want to know about her? Like, he's so annoying.
What the hell is this? Like, is this the only thing he cares about? Because that's what it seems like. He cares about two things. One, making himself look good by having Big Nung on his arm.
Correct.
And two, making sure Little Nung is with a random dude.
Not random. A dude he has vetted. That's what he cares. Because, like, think about it. He can't control... I think it's his control, because he can't control her education. So he can't control what she's studying or how well she's doing. But he can control who she marries. And, like, who she marries could influence social status, his social status, that kind of stuff. So I think for me, he reads as he's just trying to control what he can from her life as a father in this social structure would be doing. So, like, but, like, bro, like, let her, like, he never lets her talk. He's always like, how are you? Who's hitting on you? It's like, what? It shows you where his priorities lie. Again, not that that was ever in question, because he is a one-trick pony.
Sure.
Little Nung tries to evade the question by saying, yeah, there's a few people interested, but, like, she doesn't give a fuck. And by few, she has an entire fandom that is low-key stalking her at this point in time.
I don't think they're low-key doing nothing. Yeah, that poor girl. She's going through a lot right now.
Right. And because Chet is Chet, he insists on being homophobic and says that one of these potential suitors better not be Yui the tomboy. And then the camera cuts to Little Nung, who looks pissed.
And this is what all of our faces are as well.
Well, first of all, she's tired of the fact that he doesn't listen. So she's like, first of all, Yui's not a tomboy. Yui's queer. How many times do I have to explain this to you? And then after it cuts to Little Nung, the camera then cuts to Big Nung, who looks pissed, but also concerned about where's this headed. Because, what the fuck, Chet? Little Nung does not deserve this. How many times? I mean, if we had a shot for how many times we'd be dead, that the the Little Nung Whisperer told you to accept your daughter as queer and not be such a dismissive, raging homophobe. And, like, here you are, once again, being a homophobe. Plus, what pisses me off really in this scene is that this sad excuse for a human is doing this fuckery in front of Little Nung's grandmother. The family member that Little Nung cares the most about. So he's projecting his bullshit onto everybody in the family, which is so annoying. And it's upsetting that the grandmother in the scene clutches her pearls and agrees with Chet that she can't be queer and date a woman. I won't allow it.
But also, she never said that she was into Yui. Like, they're
it
both
doesn't
coming
matter.
after her for something she never even said. They are so clueless.
I mean, well, she kind of dug her own grave with this, because remember the interrogation scene with Big Nung and Sam and Chet and Yui? Because Little Nung was implying and saying in that scene that we're more than friends. So, like, this is kind of because she was dangling Yui in front of Big Nung, but Chet was there, and that's why he's obsessed with Yui, because he's like, you said you were gonna date her, and, like, I was trying to get you to not date her. So, like, he does have it in his brain, because Little Nung kind of put that there a little bit. But she has, again, did he ask, are you actually, I mean, like, but since then, Yui has not come up again, unless he's just fixated on it. All right, so the grandmother's like, I'm not going to let you be queer. And she's the only one that really has, in Little Long's mind, has any kind of like right to influence her decisions because the grandmother did raise her. So it's a respect thing. I would be ungrateful if I didn't listen to you, my elder that raised me. That's the mentality here. Plus, again, like Big Nung and the grandmam, they love each other. It's a complicated, messy, not in always healthy relationship, but like Little Nung does love and respect her grandmother. So like Big Nung's like, God damn it, Chet, you infected everybody in this house. So at this point, Big Nung is having a panic attack because her dream of being able to openly date Little Nung and keep the acceptance of Little Nung's family is being crushed into oblivion right before her eyes. But kudos to Little Nung. Despite the bullshit that's going on here and the raging homophobia, I do love the fact that she defends Yui's queerness. Again, not letting her homophobic dad mislabel her friend to be like, that she's not a lesbian, she's a queer person. Like, it's different. Get it right.
This is where I think Little Nung is a badass bitch. Because this is one of her best friends, and she is not going to let these people tear her down, even if Yui isn't present. Like, Little Nung has never hid her feelings about the LGBTQ plus community, minus the fact that she's part of it.
Right.
And not that she...
Not that she's hiding that, honestly.
Yeah, no, she's not. She's definitely not.
She's definitely
It's
not.
just that people don't have eyes.
Correct.
But I love that she's standing up for what she believes in, as long as she has Big Nung by her side. If Big Nung wasn't here, I feel like Little Nung would be more withdrawn. However, she is really just fed up with Chet right now. Like, who isn't fed up with Chet right now?
Literally, who isn't?
I don't blame her.
No.
It would just be worse with the grandmother if Big Nung wasn't here.
I agree. I think that's the bigger threat is the grandmother. Because, like, again, Little Nung actually cares about her opinion. Even though, like, she does lie and doesn't always follow it, she does care about acceptance from her grandmother. Chet, she doesn't give a flying fuck.
Nung because the grandmother is her parent. Like, Chet's a random man that came off the street. Like,
correct. And, like, the only person who actually cares about Chet's acceptance of Little Nung is Big Nung. Big Nung is the only one that cares about that. Little Nung does not care about that. Because Big Nung's thinking long term, Little Nung's thinking short term. Like I've said a million times. But, okay, what this scene reminds me of from Little Nung's point of view, where, like, Yui's not here. This is Little Nung defending Yui without Yui being present. It's kind of like when people misgender behind closed doors and Little Nung's be the advocate being like, that's not the pronouns, Dad. Like, I love that she's that person who's like, stop. She like, I will correct you because you're wrong. Like, stop doing that. You're wrong here. Like, treat people with respect, you know? So I like that she's like a little defender of, like you said, her friends. And like, she's willing to stand up to like the homophobia of it all, which she's brave. She's a brave person. For all of her quietness and introvertedness, Little Nung is very brave.
I love this part.
Yeah. But this is like typical traditionalist bullshit where Chet brushes the queer thing off as this trendy nonsense, which like it's a typical conservative talking point where he's like, what's wrong with people these days? What's wrong with the youth? Why is it so trendy to like the same gender? And that kind of like, tell me you've never heard this in real life from like conservative people who don't want to learn anything. They just express that there's ignorance with like this.
They don't realize that it's because we have internet and are so more connected now that's why. And like people are feeling more confident to be themselves rather than, you know, hide it. And like, like it's just, there's so much. This is a whole episode in itself. And I'm sure we've already talked.
It's basically, yeah, it's a visibility representation thing where, like, the best example of this is, like, left-handed people. It's like, people were always left-handed. There were always left-handed people, like, left-hand dominant. That always existed. But for a very significant period of time, Christians, thank you, I can say that as somebody who was raised as a Catholic. From the damage that was done through this cult of people. Where for a long period of time...
I know this.
Huh?
I don't know this, so continue.
Okay. So, for a long period of time, being left-handed is associated with the devil. Okay, there's some scripture, I don't even know, where, like, right-handed people, it's good, and then left-handed is the sign of the devil. So, one of my stepfather-in-laws is from Ireland, which is Catholic. And this persists or persisted up till very recently, where in school, in Catholic school, he's left-handed, and he was not allowed to be left-handed. Every time he would try to pick up a pencil and write, they would hit him and put the pencil in his right hand. They're like, you can't be left-handed, you have to be right-handed, because left is the devil. You have to use your right hand. So he had to learn how to use his non-dominant hand because left was seen as bad. So insert the metaphor, like like heterosexuality versus being queer, right? It's like, don't show me that. Show me you're straight, which is how you get like beards and shit like that. Anyway, same kind of thing. So then finally, listen, once we destigmatized it, there's graphs of like polling to show who's like polling people. Are you left-handed, right-handed? And once they destigmatize it, you see a giant spike in left-handed people, and then it plateaus out. There's a certain percentage of the population that's just naturally left-handed, but it plateaus. And then, so people who have this argument where they're like, oh, it's trendy now. It's like, no, it was always a thing. It's just people had to hide it because of the stigma. And now that there's less stigma, people are honest in admitting it. So you see the number jump as it's destigmatized. It was the same thing with being left-handed. And so people will show this conservatives the graph and be like, what do you make of this? Did suddenly just everyone's like, it's trendy to be left-handed, or it was safe to be left-handed. You weren't getting hit in school for being left-handed. It's like,
yeah. Oh my gosh, that's awful.
Yes!
I was also raised Catholic. I'm surprised I didn't hear that. My mom is fully proud of being ambidextrous. I wonder if she knows about that. Anyway, that's a whole nother.
I mean, it depends on where you were. I mean, again, this is Ireland. Ireland's a lot more conservative. Yeah. So, yeah. That's a recent thing. It's not this far-fetched, product of their time thing. No, like these are like these traditions that like held on for a long period of time that make no sense. And like, again, it just, when you force people in the closet, they're going to hide to protect themselves. It doesn't make them not left-handed. It doesn't make them not queer. Just because you refuse to see it and you want this world where everybody conforms, it doesn't mean differences don't exist. It's just people are going to hide it because you're not a safe person for them to tell you that. So anyway, back to this conversation. So with Chet's response to like, wow, it's trendy to be queer nowadays or whatever, I'm honestly surprised Little Nung didn't call him out for talking like, quote, an old person, because that's exactly what he's doing in this conversation. You know what I mean? Where she called out Big Nung, she's like, wow, you're like an old auntie. This is definitely old uncle talk, like drunk uncle talking. Like, you're like, what are you doing, Chet?
I'm wondering if she did that, if she would think that it would hurt Big Nung more because she would be putting them in the same category then, because she just made that comment earlier.
I think Big Nung would be like, no, Chet, you are being a bitch right now. Because she calls him out at the table. I think it's more so like you said, it's a regression thing. She's with her grandmother. She just got like scolded for playfully bantering with Big Nung. Imagine if she attacked Chet. I mean, I'm here for that, but I feel like her grandmother would be pissed. I'm just surprised she didn't as like a reflex. But then, okay, what does Chet do? This bitch tries to pull Big Nung into his bullshit, because of course he does, where he's like, he's like, you know what, right, Big Nung? Like, you went to an all-girl school. It didn't mean you had to date all the girls. Am I right?
He keeps trying to do this, and it never works, and he just doesn't learn.
He's an idiot. And internally, I think Big Nung's like, okay, it doesn't mean I had to date them. But if I wanted to, I could. If you want to date them, you can.
He's a dumbass.
He is a dumbass. And Big Nung is so tired of him trying to pull her onto team homophobia. And she's like, listen, she doubles down like she always does and defends Little Nung's identity as a queer woman and her choice. And she's like, listen, people can date whoever they want. Your daughter can date whoever she wants. I've said this a million times. Like, because Big Nung's like, she can date me. She wants her to date her. It's her right. She's an adult. She can make a choice. Like, who cares?
It's true.
It is. And judging by the way Little Nung looks at Big Nung, I'm certain she just fell in love with Big Nung all over again.
She falls in love with her again every day.
I mean, it's easy.
But she doesn't have to forget everything to do it.
No, she doesn't.
But I'm so glad Little Nung has someone fighting for her, because this girl deserves it. Like, finally, someone has her best interest. I mean, like, again, the whole show, Big Nung has had her best interest. But it's just every time I see someone fighting for her, which is mostly Big Nung, it's nice because this poor girl, she needs someone on her side. And then Big Nung also reminds everyone that Little Nung is now an adult. And I feel like she will be reminding everyone this even when Little Nung is like 40. Because no one's ever going to understand that she's an adult. Because everyone just wants to control her.
I feel like once she gets out of school, it'll change. Because she'll move out. But yeah, it's annoying. But I do love that. I like that Little Nung is like beaming at the end of this. And I say like she's falling in love with Big Nung all over again. Because really, like you said, Big Nung has been defending Little Nung the whole show. But there's only been a few instances where Little Nung has been able to witness Big Nung doing that. She does it a lot of times like behind closed doors. But here she is doing it in front, and Little Nung gets to see her being defended by Big Nung. And I think Little Nung loves it when Big Nung openly defends her and the relationship. And in general, just like support her. And I think this gives her hope that Big Nung is willing to fight the uphill battles for their relationship like she's willing to do all the time. So I think it's a moment of like, oh, she supports me, but also she supports us enough to like say these things, which is another battle Little Nung has been fighting since day one.
We've been fighting the same battles since day one.
But she's making progress, though. It's not a lost cause. She's making progress. But unfortunately, Chet still exists. So Chet bursts the love bubble by scolding Big Nung. But before he can get too into it, Little Nung jumps in to defend Big Nung by leading Chet away from the girl love topic at hand. So Little Nung reassures everyone at the table, she and Yui are just friends. They are not dating.
Yeah, because for some reason, Yui is the only person that they are concerned about. Like, Yui is the only person that Little Nung could be dating. There is no one else, no other woman. And, like, I feel like they have tunnel vision when it comes to Little Nung. They see one thing, and they don't see the big picture. Like, if she could possibly like Yui, that means she could possibly like any female. But no, it's just Yui. Yeah. Why don't we just open our eyes that we don't have, apparently?
And see the sexual tension across this table. Anyway, yeah, no, it's wild. It's, I think, also reinforcing the fact that they don't know her. They don't know Little Nung, and they don't try to. Like, they're not trying to get to know her at all. They're just imposing their bullshit onto her. That's why they're like, you can date anybody except Yui. It better not be Yui, that one queer person we know of. Oh, I was like, oh my god.
This is the only queer person in the entire world. In their eyes.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So Little Nung,
I'm sorry, tomboy. Not
right. Queer. Oh my god, Chet's the worst. So after Little Nung is like, I'm not dating Yui. Little Nung. Chet is so over the moon about this news that he stops eating just so he can boast that his daughter is, quote, not like that. I knew it. My offspring could never be queer. And Big Nung looks like she's trying not to stab Chet with her fork when he says this.
Honestly, same. Like, if I had a fork and if he was here,
his hands will not be safe.
Let's just chop them off.
Meanwhile, Little Nung, the mastermind, tees up to play this man like the fool that he is. So Little Nung says, yeah, that's right. I'm not dating Yui because I'm already in a relationship with somebody else. And as she finishes the statement, she starts slowly looking at Big Nung.
But, okay, I love, because I was watching this, and I watched it a few times. She immediately looks at Big Nung when she says, in a relationship. I'm just saying.
Oh, I know.
Open their eyes.
This is Little Nung playing everybody at the table. And the way Big Nung's eyes shoot up from her food to stare bewildered at Little Nung is the definition of gay panic.
This poor girl is like, what the hell is about to happen? Because she knows that Little Nung is a loose cannon. You never know what's going to come out of this girl's mouth. And she doesn't always think things through because she's just like the immediate, as you always say, Theora, like she's just right now, not the future. But Big Nung also thought they got past this. And Little Nung wouldn't openly tell her family without talking to her first. And having them both be in agreement that, yes, they are going to be public with it. So who knows what's going to happen.
So, yeah, so like Big Nung starts to gay panic because this is the theoretical scenario from the car ride that's playing out right now. So Little Nung, remember, if you go back to one of their car rides from this episode, remember when Little Nung was like, well, what if I just like say we're dating? That way they'll know we're dating, and then my dad will stop trying to marry you and shit. She's trying to kill the two birds with one stone, right? By telling everybody about her girlfriend, and Big Nung is losing it.
Okay, I'm sorry. If they did be public, so Chet would stop trying to marry her, I feel like Chet would try even harder to win her over, so she would stop dating his, I don't know, like, he would do something weird.
It's Chet.
Chet?
The scandal it would bring. Okay, but I don't think Big Nung's losing it entirely in the way you think. Because, like, on one hand, it would be nice to have this out in the open and be done with. And think about the setting. It's the grandmother and Chet. Pingfa's not here, but whatever. We can deal with Pingfa later. So, like, yeah, you could just pull the Band-Aid off and just do this because it's going to be awkward no matter what. Although, the lead up to this isn't great because of the homophobia that was just on display. So Big Nung's like, oh God, maybe, I mean, we could just get this over with, but also, like, it's going to be bad. Because, like, on the other, yeah, it's, like, this is unlikely to go well if they're going to do it right now. So, and think about the scenario we just had. It was Yui, a woman who's Little Nung's age, and Big Nung comes with more baggage than just, like, her being a woman. So, like, Big Nung's like, oh, God, you're going to do this now? But she doesn't try to stop her, does she? She just sits there and is like, what are you going to do? Because I think part of her is kind of like, I guess if we're doing this, let's just do it. You know what I mean? Because she doesn't like hiding the relationship either. So, I think she's like, if you're going to do it, let's just get it over with. Okay. Then give Little Nung an Oscar for drama because Sweet Lesbian Jesus, the way she drags this out while watching Big Nung's panic is super masterful because she doesn't just get into it. She's like, yeah, I'm dating someone. And like Big Nung is like, oh God, what is she going to say?
I mean, again, I have been saying this forever. If anyone had eyes, they would see that she is staring at Big Nung while talking about this relationship. But no. Like, she's only looking at Big Nung right now.
Again, they're perceiving it as like, she's telling her, quote, stepmom she's dating somebody who didn't know she was dating somebody. That's how they're perceiving it. So finally, after, like, her award-winning pause, she says folk. Because instead of outing them, Little Nung decided to go with the first suggestion from the car ride, where she's like, why don't I just...
Which Big Nung shot down.
Right. Little Nung was like, why don't I just fake date folk and get everybody to leave me the fuck alone? So, like, to your point, I remember Big Nung's protest at the idea... She was protesting the idea of Little Nung dating anybody, whether it was fictional or not. And, well, now Big Nung is feeling all those feelings all over again because she goes from panicked about what Little Nung's going to say to pissed off that she just said this.
Again, it's fair. Because they literally just had this conversation, which is twice now we had to say they had this conversation already. Not to mention that this isn't fair to folk. Like, that poor dude. So far, their relationship has been purely Little Nung using him. And I kind of feel bad for him because he's just been on her side through everything. I mean, there's probably times that we don't see too where she's there for them. But this is their story. And all we see is, like, folk and Yui being used.
Yeah, Little Nung does use her friends quite a bit. Okay. So yeah, Big Nung is not happy with the way this went. And Chet is like, what the fuck, is this true? Because he's mad. He couldn't screen the dude before Little Nung decided to start dating somebody. He's like, I'm supposed to screen your suitors. What the fuck? I'm your dad. And Little Nung proceeds to explain that, like, oh, no. She explains, like, the fake friends to lovers scenario that has now just come to fruition. She's like, yeah, no, it's friends to lovers. It's fine. Just read a book, Dad. You'll get it. And Big Nung is so pissed off, she audibly drops her silverware on the plate. Now, you know Big Nung is pissed off if she isn't eating.
But, like, the icing on the cake is the smile from Little Nung at the end of all this. Like, she thinks that she's fixed it. But Big Nung knows that this is not going to help.
No. So let's hard cut to the end of the evening, where Little Nung bids Big Nung farewell outside, away from Chet and the grandmother. And once they're alone, Big Nung's like, what the fuck were you thinking? Like, why are you now fake dating Folk? She's like, it's rude to drag, quote, Folk into this.
Yes. But Folk would do anything for Little Nung. He is the only decent guy in this show.
Yeah, he is her ride or die. But, like, Little Nung's loving this, though, because Big Nung's jealousy is on display throughout this whole thing. That's the reaction that she's into. So she's worried about, quote, Folk in this scenario. So Little Nung argues that she's like, listen, I said this to, like, appease you. She recognized that, like, this topic of, like, other people dating her and Chet's homophobia makes Big Nung upset. So she's like, listen, if I have a fake boyfriend, that will throw my family off the scent of our relationship. Because she's like, eventually, if we don't tell them, my family's going to be like, why don't you have a boyfriend? And why are you always hanging around Big Nung? So she's like, they're going to put it together because we're not subtle. And also, like, they already know I'm queer on some level, even if they won't accept it, and they're going to start putting two and two together. So she's like, if I'm fake dating Folk, it will get my family to leave me the fuck alone, my weird fans to leave me the fuck alone, because if people will leave me alone if they think I'm dating him, because there's a man involved who has a claim, so, like, people, she's like, it will take the heat off of everything. And also, like, I think Little Nung also wants a break from the homophobia, because I think that has to upset her, too, just the homophobia from her family.
Yes. Like, knowing that your family doesn't accept you, it would suck to have to keep seeing them. And being subject to all of it.
Right. Okay. And Big Nung can't argue with those points because they're all valid points that Little Nung is bringing up. But Big Nung insists that, like, she's like, it's not right because you are toying with folks' feelings. Okay. In this conversation, substitute the word folk for Big Nung. Because that's what she's really upset about. She's having her feelings hurt right now. And she's using folk as the excuse. So if you watch Big Nung in the scene, she looks defeated. She's exhausted. And I imagine feels out of control with how this whole scenario just played out. Because I think, she's one of those people who overthink shit. So she's probably thought through the scenario of, like, how are we going to tell your family? 100 different ways. Like, she likes to play mental chess when it comes to things. And then here's Little Nung, the loose cannon, like you said, just, like, coming in and being like, we're doing this now, even though, like, homophobia is out on the table. And Big Nung's like, oh, this is the worst possible time to do this. What are you doing? And then she brings a man into it. And Big Nung's like, oh my God, girl. So there's that. But also there's, like, the simpler scenario of all this, where for Big Nung, this feels like she's losing Little Nung in a way. Because now, in the eyes of the family, Little Nung is further away from being hers than she was before the dinner. Because part of what she's doing is she's trying to get the family to accept Little Nung's queerness. Because think about the conversation. They're like, you could date anybody, just not a woman. And then Big Nung's like, no, she's an adult who can make her own choices. Like, it's fine if she dates a woman. And so she's been trying to just get them to accept that. So that goes out the window if Little Nung's like, don't worry, I'm not dating a woman, I'm dating a man. So, like, that like, then they're like, oh, great, we knew you weren't like that. So for me, this is like a big L for Big Nung, where she's like, I was trying so hard to just get them to accept you, and now they don't have to because you're, quote, dating a man. So Little Nung assures Big Nung, she's like, listen, it's okay, I'm not playing with folks' feelings because I already asked him off screen if he would agree to be my fake boyfriend to fend off the toxic fandom. And he said yes, knowing full well this is a fake relationship. And that is 100% something Folk would do, like you said, because he's her friend.
Yeah, I kind of wish we got that, though, because I would like to see Folk's face as soon as she says it. Because you'd be like, okay, I guess we're doing this now.
I mean, in the scene with the toxic phantom, he's like, yeah, we'll do whatever we need to do to protect you. So I feel like he would just do it and not think anything of it. Because he does have her well-being, you know, he does care about that.
I wonder if he's already thought about it too. It was like, if she needs that, I'd do it for her.
Right. I'm pretty sure he has, because he's a good person. And logically, Little Nung's arguments for fake dating folk make sense. But Big Nung argues that there must be some other way, because Little Nung's declaration that she's fake dating folk is hurting folks' feelings. It's hurting her feelings. Okay, so the subtext is, again, substitute folk for Big Nung. Little Nung is hurting Big Nung's feelings in this scene. That's what this is really about. And Little Nung has seen this film before and is desperate for a different ending. So she asks, what's the, Big Nung's like, there's got to be some other way we can do this. And Little Nung's like, okay, well, what is the other way then? And I think Big Nung doesn't answer this, but they both know full well what the other way is. It's Little Nung and Big Nung coming out with their relationship, being like, this is my girlfriend, this is who I'm actually dating, deal with it. And Big Nung's like, oh god, the drama that will ensue. She's like, we'll think of something. And Little Nung smiles at this because I think she appreciates the we part of this sentence. We will come up with a solution. But then Big Nung follows this up immediately with, like, you need to break up Folk right now. Folk doesn't know they're dating. This just happened 2 minutes ago. He has no idea. Like, how is his feelings in question if he doesn't know what just happened at dinner? At least this Big Nung being irrational again. And Little Nung knows that.
It's not like she announced it on the internet.
No! Like, she just told 2 people who are not on the internet. Like, he shouldn't even tell Folk. But Little Nung, of course, knows why Big Nung is being irrational. So she tells Big Nung, I like seeing you like this. Because we've been here before. And Big Nung plays dumb. She's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And Little Nung steps into Big Nung's personal space and, like, leans onto her shoulder. And she's like, you're being jealous.
Yeah, you like this part.
I like this for Little Nung. Because, yeah, it's like, again, Big Nung's trying to be all logical about this stuff, and Little Nung's like, at the end of the day, it's because you care about me. That's all it is. But I think for Big Nung, it's more than jealousy. Like, like I've said a million times, she is also very tired of hiding their relationship. So I think part of her at the table when Little Nung was going to do it was relieved. She's like, I'm tired of hiding this. She does not want to hide it, but she's just scared of the consequences, the fallout, all of that stuff. And truly, it's becoming harder and harder to keep this up. I mean, look at them at the table. They just fall very easily into their, like, relationship banter in front of her family. So, like, it's getting harder for them to keep playing this charade of, like, we're just friends or whatever. And, like, I think a big part of Big Nung just doesn't want to keep doing this either.
It's basically locking them both in the closet.
Yeah, it is. And I don't think either of them wants to be there, truly. And I think that Big Nung knows that telling everyone they're dating is is the thing that's going to uncomplicate this, despite all the bullshit that they're going to face with their unconventional relationship. But for Big Nung and all of her bravado, she's kind of a coward when it comes to this. And it's understandable because she's really scared. And because she's scared, she doubles down on the bullshit in this conversation, insisting that she is serious about Little Nung unfake dating Folk because of Folk's feelings. And because Little Nung was just denied the cookie of Big Nung admitting she was jealous, she pouts. And then is like, fine, Big Nung, I'll do what you want. Because she knows Big Nung is full of shit. She decides to be super unserious about it. And she, like, salutes and she's like, Roger that.
I love this part.
I miss funny.
Big Nung's like, now's not the time.
But she's like, this is an unserious conversation because, like, how could you think that I like Folk like that? She tried to set me up with him before. Didn't mean anything. And she's like, just admit you're jealous because that's partially what's happening here. All right, and so then Little Nung tries to play her old tricks with Big Nung, and she tries to very quickly do her speak quickly to get Big Nung confessed move, and asks, were you jealous right now? And Big Nung is not in the mood for this, and is listening for once, and, like, whips her head so fast it's terrifying that Little Nung is like, yikes, okay, you're too serious, no more flirting, bye. And she runs back into the house without even attempting to steal a kiss, so Now is not the time for your moves, little Nung. No cookies for you tonight.
No cookies. She knows that she needs to let Big Nung cool down, because the night definitely didn't go the way Big Nung thought it would.
No. And while Little Nung is running back inside, the camera lingers on Big Nung for a second, who looks pretty shaken up by all of this. Which leads us into later that evening. So Big Nung is at home in bed by herself, having a very restless night. And she's thinking back on all the worst hits from the past few weeks. Insert timeline, because what time is it? Who knows? So she's thinking about all the homophobia from Little Nung's family. She's thinking about the age gap judgments from the art class with Juan Viva's friends. She's thinking back to when she was at Sam and Mon's by the pool and voicing her relationship insecurities. And lastly, she starts thinking about how she felt like trash when Little Nung kept calling her old.
Yeah, this one is especially important because it just reiterates how hurt she was by having the person she loves make comments about their ages. Like, we just talked about it, but like, this really shows how much it's hurt her, that she's thinking about it with all these other hurtful things.
Yeah, I think that's the one that bothers her the most, like you're saying. And so what does Big Nung do? She grabs her little stuffed animal, that little stuffed, I think it's a rabbit, could be a dog, but I think it's a rabbit, and starts playing with it for a minute, and then like rolls over and hugs the doll. And I think the reason she's doing this, or why they had the actor do this, is because this is her childhood doll, I'm assuming, because we saw it for the very first time when she returns to the Bua Palace, and it's like in her bed. So I'm going with that. And if that's the case, I imagine her clutching this is like her comfort toy. And this is a depiction of her like mental and emotional state. Like, she's a scared little girl right now. Okay, and so she's clutching her little doll and like thinking about all the things that are making her sad or scared or whatever. So it's interesting to me that she chose this stuffed animal and not the one Little Nung gifted her for her birthday, like the big Little Nung stuffed animal. She chose the childhood doll. And you would think that in the scene, if what's bothering her is like losing Little Nung because of all the bullshit going on, she would reach for the Little Nung doll to comfort her, but she doesn't. So perhaps this is showing that Big Nung feels alone in this moment. Like, she's spiraling and looking inward for answers, which is what we've seen her pattern of behavior over and over again. So it's like she's regressing into old habits because she's scared that perhaps her relationship with Little Nung is impossible. So she's like thinking about like the negatives of this and is like, well, I've been in this honeymoon phase with her for like a while and it's been great. And when it's just us, it's great. But now like the reality of all the challenges associated is like coming in. And so I think that Big Nung's terrified that she's been like deluded by the happiness that she's been feeling when the odds really stacked against them seem insurmountable to her in this moment.
I think maybe she wants to go back to a time when this all wasn't so complicated, when her family was whole and before she was even expected to act a certain way. Like the time when her and the grandmam actually bonded and Song was in her life. She's like, I want everything to be easier. It was never easy for her, but there was a time when things were happy.
Yeah. That's the childhood regression. When I was younger, things were simpler. Like, now I'm an adult and shit's fucking messy, you know?
Yeah.
And after some deliberation, Big Nung texts Juan Viva, "Can you come over tomorrow?" Proving that she's 100% that friend that hangs out with you and it's convenient for her. Because it's the middle of the night.
She's that night. Yeah.
And she's texting Juan. So, and now, granted, we don't get the name of the person she's texting, but I assume it's Juan Viva, based off of the scene following this, and the fact that Big Nung is texting somebody in the dead of night. So, like, Juan Viva makes the most sense. Because she wouldn't be texting Chet in the middle of the night. Right? Or texting Chet. But
No.
Chet does show up, so she does text him.
Yeah, but I feel like he was a last minute thing. I feel like...
Also, look at the text. Are you free tomorrow? Can you come see me at my place? She wouldn't ask Chet, are you free? She'd be like, come over tomorrow. Like, she would demand that he come over. Like, it seems too polite for Chet. And Juan Viva doesn't answer immediately because I assume she is either asleep or busy. And will likely text Big Nung back after 4 a.m. when her PTSD kicks in, / her resolved PTSD activities kick in.
I think that's very plausible, and I think after 4 a.m. she's probably texting her in a bubble bath too, so she can feel closer to playing.
Exactly, yeah. So Juan Viva's busy in the middle of the night. Big Nug. Put some respect on her. She earned it. All right, afterwards, we get some lingering shots of Big Nung as she hatches her master plan for the next day. And then she plays with the little plushie doll again, indicating I think she feels uneasy and like really needs a hug. I know we've said that multiple times in this episode. This is a Big Nung needs a hug episode. Oh my god. Okay, so let's cut over to the next evening. Big Nung unveils her master plan. This is the Millennials versus Gen Z, the dinner edition.
Could you imagine if that was actually a show?
I think it'd be fine. All right, so let's talk about the seating arrangement. So this is unlike the dinner at Little Nung's house where it was like family. Everybody's kind of like on the same playing field. No, we got the power going on in this scene. So Big Nung is the head of the table because she's hosting this. She's the head of the family. Makes sense. On the right, we have the guest of honor, who is Juan Viva, who's closest to Big Nung. Then next to her is Chet, because if I were Big Nung, I would also move Chet as far away from me as humanly possible.
In my head, though, Chet tried to sit in the seat of honor, but Big Nung gave him that look, and he immediately cowered into the next seat over.
Juan Viva. I love that Big Nung kept the women closest to her and moved the men. So that shows you Big Nung's headspace. Also, like, she's making a clear divide of, like, millennials versus Gen Z, because Chet is next to Juan Viva. Then on the other side of the table, you have Little Nung, who's sitting next to Big Nung, near the head of the table, because she's the wife of the household. But nobody knows that. And then next to her is Folk, okay? Little Nung is not pleased that Big Nung let the hot doctor into their home. And she's really not happy that she has to stare across the table at the hot doctor all night either.
In her eyes, this is really her worst nightmare.
It is.
Because, like, in that birthday episode, Little Nung asked Big Nung if she invited the pretty doctor and her father. And now they're in even more intimate setting with the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's too much for her brain.
It's too much. But Big Nung, who knows that Little Nung's feeling uneasy, serves Little Nung food as a peace offering. So if you notice, everybody starts grabbing their own food, but Big Nung is the one that, like, takes food and, like, gives it to Little Nung. As if she's trying to say, listen, don't worry, I invited her for non-romantic reasons.
But note that Big Nung does serve food to Juan first, which I'm sure Little Nung wasn't happy about.
She's not happy about any of this.
No.
And in the scene, so, like, Big Nung, as she's kind of doing this, smiles, but it looks forced and doesn't, like, quite meet her eyes. Almost like she is dreading what's about to go down, even though, in her mind, it's for the best. All right, so dinner proceeds. Everybody starts dishing out food, and people start eating. And then Juan Viva is the first to speak, and she comments that Auntie Nim's royal cuisine is dope. And Big Nung puts on her best hostess mask and says, well, you gotta eat a lot then, which is Thai/Italian for I love you. At least that's what Little Nung heard, because she starts staring daggers at Big Nung. Chet, oblivious to the queerness happening at the table, because Chet steers the conversation into adult topics, where he's like, how's work, Big Nung? And now I know Big Nung's on some bullshit because she says Juan Viva is the one who works a lot. And it's like, girl, have you met Juan Viva?
Seriously.
She's always at the mall. What do you mean?
It's proven in 2 series now that this woman barely works. I'm pretty sure we've only seen her intubate someone once. How she learned to do that? I don't even know.
Did she even go to school? I don't even know.
She watched Grey's Anatomy and was like, yes, I know how to do this now.
Juan Viva would do that. Yeah, Juan Viva's always leaving work.
That's her doctorate. She watched Grey's Anatomy once.
That's terrifying.
That is terrifying.
Yeah, because, like, in this show, she's at best a secret shopper and at worst a shopaholic. We have no evidence she's a doctor in this show. Go watch Affair for what Kaitlyn's talking about. But in this show, I have no evidence of that. But Big Nun keeps the party going by bringing up healthcare, which that conversation made no sense. And then financial investments, like, adult stuff. So Chet and Juan Viva launch into this riveting conversation for them about these topics.
Juan mentions that Big Nung says that Chet is an expert in investing, and the look that he gets irks me. Like, he's probably like, I knew it. She does like me. Any ounce of progress they made toward him understanding that she does not like him because he is a little versed is now gone.
I think this is just an ego stroke where he's like, yeah, I am good at business because I went to school for business, I assume, or whatever. And like, yeah, he's just, I don't like when he has confidence at all.
He does not need any more confidence.
No.
Or audacity.
Yes, that too. Okay, so while the adults are talking, and by adults, I mean Juan Viva and Chet, and that'll be important in a second. Little Nung and Folk are bored out of their minds because they're too busy studying their students to earn their degrees so that one day they can get jobs and then worry about healthcare and financial investments.
The adults, quote, are also talking about retirement, which is something definitely not on their minds. It isn't on Big Nung's either because she is set for life now, right? Yeah, Juan also mentions, Juan mentions that she is interested in crypto right now. And I feel like this is just a buzzword she heard around the hospital when she was actually there for once. Because I don't actually see her knowing what that is.
Yeah, I have notes on that in a second, but this was weird. Yeah, I agree. It's weird. Okay, but listen. Okay, so again, I pointed out adults in the conversation having this topic, talking about this, is Chet and Juan Viva. And like Folk and Little Nung are super bored by this conversation. You want to know who else is not engaging with this quote adult conversation? Big Nung. Because she doesn't say anything. Because let's be honest, Big Nung is also bored to tears by what Chet and Juan Viva are talking about. Like, if you watch her, she's visibly squirming in the scene and also not paying attention to what they're saying. Like, she's zoned out. So, I find this really funny because she basically set this up to be like, look, Little Nung, we have nothing in common. Meanwhile, she's not engaging with the adults either. So, okay, the only time Big Nung does pay attention to anything is when Little Nung admits to Folk she doesn't know what Chet and Juan Viva are talking about. Okay, and this is the part, to your point, where they're talking about the crypto. And like, okay, Chet does give me crypto bro energy, like in general. So like, it's not a surprise that he's excited by this. Juan Viva being excited by this, I feel like she heard about it from one of her doctor friends and was like, What is that? Because like, it's a very specific type of bro dude who has way too much confidence that would be into crypto. So like a surgeon probably mentioned it to her and she's like, what's that? Or like Plang's like weird art friends, like who have too much money, they don't know what to do with themselves, probably mentioned this word once to her. And then Chet is like, yeah, I'm a good financial guy, let's talk about crypto. He gives me crypto bro energy. Like he just has it. He's that guy, you know?
I could see that. Yeah. But it's also interesting that Big Nung only starts paying attention when Chet mentions high risk. Right now, Big Nung associates the word risk with her relationship with Little Nung because it is a high risk with them together. The biggest risk is Little Nung losing her family, which she's been trying to prevent this whole time. And this whole line from Chet is basically what they are doing right now. High risk equals their relationship. Research equals feeling things out, trying to figure out how to get them to accept Little Nung. And opportunities equal the ability for them to be together and have a future. Because, I don't know if you said this line, but he said, Chet says there's a high risk, but if we do some research, there are also a lot of opportunities.
No, I didn't mention that. No, that is interesting. Yeah, because right now, like, these two are trying to navigate what are the opportunities for us to be together, like you said.
Mm-hmm. So that line is very much relevant to her, and so it's interesting that that's what she's paid attention to.
Yeah. But after Little Nung, going back to the Little Nung is like, folk, I don't know what the hell's going on. I'm really bored. After she says this, Big Nung looks at Little Nung and they make eye contact. And they don't say anything to each other. They're just like communicating telepathically. And to me, Little Nung is saying, Big Nung, why are they here ruining our dinner? We're supposed to have dinner together. This is our time. And Big Nung doesn't answer and instead breaks eye contact and almost is like saying to herself that like she hates that she was right about this, but also like hopefully Little Nung can clearly see how impossible the relationship is. Like, because that's why we're here. That's what she's trying to demonstrate. So finally we get to the end of the dinner, and thankfully everyone leaves, except Little Nung, who apparently is sleeping over tonight.
Okay, but as everyone is leaving, Folk doesn't even say anything. Like, he does politely gesture. I think he's just excited he gets to leave this situation.
Yes.
He will do anything for Little Nung, but he does get more than he bargained for every time the family's involved.
That was a terrible dinner. At least he got good food. Apparently Auntie Nim knows how to cook real well, so there's that. Free food.
I would love to have food from Auntie Nim.
Right? So after everybody leaves, Big Nung beelines for the closest couch. And I don't really know what room they're in because I didn't get a good... This is a new set. But anyway, they exit through this door, and then like 3 feet over is a love seat. So Big Nung beelines and sits down on the couch. Little Nung follows Big Nung to the couch and pulls a Nick Nelson because she needs to recharge her batteries by hugging Big Nung. Alright, which begs the question, now that we're here, for the Heartstopper fans. If Little Nung took the same Are You Gay BuzzFeed quiz that Nick took in Heartstopper, what would her score be?
Little Nung, right?
Little Nung.
110%. Definitely. Yeah. There was no question in that girl's mind since before this show started.
Agreed. She'd break the quiz.
If you have a different answer, let us know in the comments.
Yeah. What's her quiz score? Nick was 62% homosexual, for context. Okay. So Big Nung has the brain cell at this moment and immediately freaks out because they're right by the exit, like I mentioned.
And they just left.
Right. And it's like, okay, Big Nung, but you chose the couch right near the exit. Like, you've known Little Nung long enough to know she was going to cling to you the second the other people left. So this should not be surprising. Like, there's other couches in this house we could have picked. But I think Big Nung is so off balance by her insecurities right now, and this whole dinner, again, was orchestrated so she could confirm her own biases, that their relationship is doomed. And so she's not thinking clearly in this scene. Because if she was, she would have chose to go upstairs to one of their private rooms that both have couches to continue this conversation. But because this couch is basically out in public as far as the palace is concerned. Like, staff can see them and shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I keep forgetting about the staff.
Cannot forget the staff. All right. And Little Nung is like, Big Nung, I love you, and that dinner was exhausting. What do you want from me? And Big Nung's like, why are you tired? Girl, like, your girl gets socially exhausted. Like, you know that. And that was a lot, okay, that you just put her through. There's a lot of people there. Plus, listening to Chet talk is like a verbal sleep aid. Everyone at that table, except Juan Viva, needed a nap after that. Okay? Let's be real.
I need a nap when I see Chet.
Right, exactly. He's walking Valium or whatever. So Big Nung is still on her bullshit because she tells Little Nung she invited, quote, the adults over to talk. And Little Nung's like, you're being really weird right now. And she's like, okay, Big Nung, like, is there something you want to talk to me about? Because it seems like you're upset, and now I'm upset. And Little Nung doesn't want to play these games when it comes to the relationship. And, like, her girlfriend's acting weird. So she's like, can you tell me what's bothering you? Because something's clearly bothering you. And, like, we didn't have to go through this whole dinner bullshit. You could have just talked to me. So after Little Nung asks her this, fear flashes across Big Nung's face. And she breaks eye contact with Little Nung, and like her eyes start to glaze over. Because I think Big Nung, when she orchestrated the whole thing, knew she was going to have to confront all of this bullshit and talk to Little Nung about it. But again, that was theoretical. Now they're in that moment where they're about to have the conversation, and she's terrified. Because ultimately, like, her being scared is the root of all of this. And she's so scared in this scene when Little Nung's asking her what's wrong that she's like catatonic. She can't move, she can't talk. It's like she's paralyzed with fear. Because she's silent, Little Nung gently but firmly says her name, which brings Big Nung kind of back into the present moment and out of those spiraling thoughts that she's starting to have. Because, like, again, like in the car, Little Nung is constantly her grounding force, and like she's doing it right now in this scene.
Also, her voice is lower here, and Little Nung is being completely serious. Little Nung knows there is something serious going on with Big Nung, and she should not be teasing or playing around anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, like, kudos to Little Nung. Like, when she does pick up on Big Nung's fear and her being off balance, like, she did it in the other car scene. She does stop the childish, quote, like, the playfulness, and she gets serious, too, to match, because it's hard to, like, match Big Nung's seriousness, because Big Nung is always serious, even when she's, like, that's just her natural state, so Little Nung dismisses it sometimes, because she's always serious, but then when she realizes that she's serious because something's wrong, that's when Little Nung reins in her, like, playfulness, and is like, let me match your seriousness, because something actually is happening, and you need the reassurance so that you'll open up, because that's Big Nung's pattern of behavior, and Little Nung knows that. Okay, but Big Nung is preparing herself to break up with Little Nung. It's basically what she's doing. And so she, like, looks at Little Nung, almost like she's trying to, like, quickly memorize her face one last time before she speaks. And when she speaks, Big Nung just, like, launches into their ages and starts doing gay math. And she's like, I'm 37 this year, and you're 22. And Little Nung's like, okay, this is not brand new information, but okay.
She's like, and your point is?
Uh-huh. And Big Nung continues, when I'm 40, you'll be 24. And Little Nung's like, congrats, you can do math without a calculator. Like, why are you bringing this up? Because Little Nung, despite this dinner, still doesn't see the issue with their relationship. Especially, like, the issues that literally were plaguing Big Nung. Remember, she was trying to sleep, and the issues were plaguing her so much she couldn't sleep, and that's where this whole dinner fiasco came from. And once Big Nung starts talking, it gets easier for her to speak her truth. So after she gets through the math, she mentions their huge age gap. She's like, look, we have a huge gap between us. An even bigger gap.
Bigger gap.
All right. Then she's like, and Little Nung's like, I know that. Again, not brand new information. So then Big Nung brings up the dinner fiasco. And Little Nung admits she couldn't understand what Chet and Juan Vivo were talking about. She only had folk to converse with, which was why Big Nung picked who she picked to be at that dinner. To like, then she's like, great, Little Nung can see that. Wonderful. That was my goal.
Let's be honest, though, Big Nung. You didn't know what they were talking about either.
No, she did not engage in any of the adult conversations. You noticed her. She was not engaging. She also doesn't know what they're talking about.
You think she knows what crypto is?
No.
Hell no.
No, I'm not convinced she knows about
barely use her iPad. We're kidding. Anyway.
The screenwriter did confirm Big Nung knows how to use an iPad. We don't see her dabble in technology. That's where we're getting that from.
Yes.
She seems old
nothing
school.
To do with her age. Theora is the same age. Theora knows how to use iPad.
Correct. She just seems technologically adverse, where she just doesn't dabble in technology as much as other people. That's all. Yeah. It's not an age comment. She just doesn't seem like a technology person.
And yeah, because every time we see her, she's just not using it.
She's not using it. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, back to the dinner. Little Nung could only talk to folk because he was the only one including her. Little Nung definitely could have fit into the conversation if she was being included, and if her father didn't automatically treat her like a toddler whenever he is around.
Ding. He doesn't treat her like a person. You need to be a person to have a conversation.
Yeah, and adult conversations don't always have to be serious and life altering, which Big Dog is making it seem like. In the same way that conversations with younger people, even kids, don't have to be childish. There have been numerous instances that I have seen kids have more emotional maturity than adults, and Little Nung has proved this herself countless times. Little Nung is more of an adult than Chet will ever be, and he can't accept that.
He can't even see that because he doesn't see her as a person.
Oh my gosh, this pisses me off because you know what? I have had some really like conversations with children where I'm like, where the hell is this coming from, you little adult? Anyway.
Yeah, and like I don't think the emotional maturity is the question here. Big Nung's freaking out that like they're at different stages in their lives. So then she brings up like our lifestyles are completely different. Nothing matches. And it's like I get where she's coming from, but like not true. But her choice of the words nothing speaks to how hopeless she feels in this moment. Because we've said over and over again how like they do have things in common. They can have adult conversations, quote, or whatever, like partner conversations. But this is a reflection of how Big Nung feels. She feels like this is hopeless. Nothing is a very hopeless word. So her words matter here. It's a reflection of how she feels, more than anything.
I've said this before, but these two were made for each other. They are very, very similar, but different enough to help each other grow as people and as a couple.
Yes. And that's the beauty.
Why they work.
That's the beauty of this show and why I personally love their relationship the most. It's so good. So let's get back to why this whole scene is proof of why like they balance each other out really well. So like what does Little Nung do in this conversation? She doesn't lash out and insist, Big Nung, you're crazy. Like, look at all we've been through. Like, she doesn't lash out at Big Nung. Or she doesn't dismiss what Big Nung is saying. She's not like, wow, Big Nung, you're being crazy right now. Like, she knows, Little Nung knows how hard it is for Big Nung to be honest. And she respects Big Nung. Like, they respect each other, which is the other huge thing of why their relationship is healthy and why it works. The two of them respect each other as people at the end of the day. So what does Little Nung do? Instead of like voicing the opposition to what Big Nung is saying, nothing works, and demonstrating why they do work with a bunch of facts about the things they have in common, what Little Nung does is she gives Big Nung what she needs in this moment, recognizing she's scared, which is comfort. She just comforts Big Nung in this moment because she's scared and she can see that because she can read Big Nung's emotions because Big Nung has been expressing them more. And so what Little Nung does is she grabs Big Nung's hand, which is a grounding gesture we've mentioned a bunch of times. And usually the physical contact from Little Nung helps Big Nung stop spiraling. And so she asks Big Nung, instead of arguing, she asks Big Nung, what should I do? She's like, despite never taking a finance class or being pre-med like these bozos, I still love you despite not being an expert at these adult subjects. And so Little Nung offers, she's like, how can I change so that our lifestyles will match up? Like, do I take an economics class? Should I get some, quote, adult hobbies? Like, what can I do to make you feel better about this? Basically is what she's saying. And she goes through all of this and then finishes by asking, should I change my entire life? And Big Nung just like looks at her in awe. And I think this is the moment for Big Nung when she realizes she's found the one person in the world who actually is worthy of her. This is the moment where Little Nung, I think to Big Nung, realizes Little Nung kept that promise she made a really long time ago where she's like, I will do whatever it takes to be worthy of you. And I think this is Little Nung doing that. It's just this.
Yeah, Big Nung's entire life, people wanted her to change for them, especially the Great Man.
Yes.
But this is the first person who is respecting her enough to be willing to do what it takes to be with her. even if I don't like the fact that Little Nung is willing to change everything about herself, I have said that many times. But also, side note, Little Nung would totally take a wine class so she could go to the next dinner party and start swirling the wine in her hand and talking about its feet, the body, the tannins. And now Chet would be the confused one, that uncultured swine.
He's such a bitch. I can't stand him. But yeah, like, Little Nung would absolutely do that. And Big Nung would be like, I don't know any of these words. Because, like, truly, she doesn't have adult hobbies. She doesn't.
That's true. But, like, Chet would be the confused one, but he would pretend like he knew.
Yes.
And then he would be trying to talk to, and then Little Nung would be like, that's not what it is.
Chet would be the gif from The Office of Michael Scott, like, swirling the wine and, like, doing all the things and tasting it and being like, this is a white. Like, that would be Chet. He's Michael Scott. He's actually Michael Scott a lot. If you've seen The Office, let me know in the comments. I think he's like Michael Scott. Okay. So yeah, to bring it back in, Little Nung is willing to do whatever it takes. I don't think she means in this scenario, I will become a totally different person. I think what she's really saying to Big Nung is, I'll do whatever it takes for you, Big Nung, to see me as worthy. Because that was the promise Little Nung made in the first episode. And so what she's offering to do is like, how do I change to match you, is what she's asking. Because she follows this up by saying, I'm willing to do anything, but I will not lose you. Which is, yeah, that's like, because again, like, we've spent a lot of time in the show for Big Nung to come out of the denial of her feelings, but also she had to come out of the denial of what Little Nung's feelings. It took her a while to also accept that what Little Nung is saying when she says things like this, she means it. Like, she very much means what she's saying. She's not just saying these things to say them. Like, when she says, I'll do whatever it takes, I'm not losing you, she means that shit. That's what makes her worthy, okay? So then after this declaration of love, basically, Little Nung paints a picture of what she envisions their future to be. In the present, you are the one that takes care of me. Like, she starts saying things like that, like, because she's basically going to tell Big Nung a story of, like, what their situation really looks like. And it demonstrates how Little Nung thinks about their relationship and how a lot of the conflict with them is Big Nung being like, well, Little Nung really hasn't thought this through. But when she goes into this envisioning of the future of what their relationship will ultimately look like, it demonstrates to Big Nung that, like, Little Nung has thought through their relationship and accepts it for what it is. So she says, in the present, you're the one that takes care of me, because she's the younger one that needs some guidance and some help. So she's not in a position to be, like, fully independent yet. So yeah, Big Nung helps her a lot more. She drives her to school. She sticks up for her with the parents because they don't see her as an adult quite yet, because she's stepping into that role for the very first time. There's a lot of imbalance in their relationship where, like, she has to lean on Big Nung a lot more at this stage. But then Little Nung says, well, over time that's going to change, because as we age, eventually you're going to have to lean on me. That's just how aging is. And I'm going to be the one that takes care of you. And Little Nung understands that now. Like, that's the trajectory of their relationship ultimately. And she's like, I understand that. And, like, I'm fine with that. And really, Big Nung should have wifed Little Nung right here in this scene when she's saying this.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful, but she doesn't, because Big Nung is way too in her head right now, and she feels like she's not worthy of Little Nung. Because again, a lot of this was Little Nung trying to prove she's worthy, but really, there are moments when it's evident that, like, Big Nung's like, I don't feel worthy of all this love you're trying to give me. And I think it's pretty evident by Faye's award-winning hovering tears that we see in this moment. They're back. They're back, everyone. While Big Nung is getting super emotional, but she still doesn't say anything. She's just, the tears are hovering, okay? Little Nung reassures her that by telling Big Nung everything she needs to hear, and she's like, okay, I just told you what our relationship's gonna look like, and I've come to terms with that, and I still love you. Should I keep reminding you every day that I love you? Because what Little Nung is saying is, like, no matter what happens, she's like, I want us to be together. Like, she's like, I'll tell you every single day until you actually believe me when I say, because she's been saying it over and over and over again. And At first, Big Nung found that to be annoying because she's like, you throw that word around that means something, you know, and Little Nung's like, I'm throwing this word around because it means something and because you don't believe me. And I will keep saying it until you believe me. So she's doing that again. She's like, want me to go back to doing that again? I will do that if it gets you to believe me. And at this point, Big Nung sheds her first tear. And immediately Little Nung wipes it away. And she's like, listen, I will keep telling you I love you like I have loved you from the very first day.
And she means the first day. Maybe not even the day that we saw. The very first time that she has laid eyes on this woman.
Yeah. And basically what she's trying to say is like, you know, I've loved you from the first moment I saw you, basically. It's like a love at first sight thing for Little Nung. And which, take that for what you will. But the bottom line really is that Little Nung is saying, like, my feelings for you have never changed. I've always felt this way about you. Always. This whole entire time. My feelings have never changed, and they're not going to, and I understand that about my feelings. It's very hard for Big Nung to, like, honestly believe her when she says that part. Because she's insecure about the variables that come with life. And she's like, well, she's going to change. Because people do change over time. And that is so valid. But Little Nung's like, we've already been through so much stuff. She's already gone through a lot of change. Like, Little Nung, going from, like, high school to college. And she's like, I still feel this way about you, even though my life has completely changed. So, like, she's like, I'm even more confident now that I was right. You know. I knew everything when I was young, basically.
Which is amazing.
It's the confidence. The confidence.
Yeah, confidence.
The audacity. Little Nung.
Everything. Little Nung.
And Little Nung in the scene is reading the situation for exactly what it is. It's Big Nung running away because she's scared.
The look on Big Nung's face, though, is total bewilderment. Like, this woman is everything she could ever want.
Yeah. And it's somebody who knows her and knows how to talk to her. So Little Nung tells Big Nung, she's like, you don't have to be afraid. Like, evidence that, like, again, Little Nung is reading this situation for what it is. And what she's saying is basically, like, you don't have to be alone with these thoughts and feelings. Because anytime Big Nung gets scared, she retreats and isolates herself. That was when she was in bed with the doll and just, like, having the thoughts. She's doing it alone. That's when she processes things. So remember with the song episode where she went through all of that, she retreated, was having the feelings, and Little Nung's like, you don't need to keep doing this. Like, it's okay to just, when you're scared, talk to me about it. She's saying that again because while they had the conversation, it's still hard. It takes a lot of practice to be able to actually do that when you've been so conditioned to isolate yourself and process your feelings alone. Okay? So, like, Big Nung still needs help to be able to actually do that on her own. And so what this conversation and this moment really is, it's Little Nung stepping up to take care of Big Nung. Remember how she said, she's like, in the future, you're going to have to rely on me more and more. And I totally get that. And, like, she's showing Big Nung in this moment, I am capable of doing that. I am capable of being the person that you're going to lean on when you need to. So, like, I think for Big Nung, that starts clicking a little bit too, that, like, because I wonder if she's also insecure about the fact that, like, well, when I get older and I can't take care of you, then why are you going to leave me? Like, because you rely on me now. Is that our relationship? So I think she's also worried about, like, their dynamic possibly changing and then Little Nung won't, quote, love her anymore as part of the change. But Little Nung's like, no, I understand. Our dynamic will shift and change, and that's not a bad thing. We're going to balance each other out over time. Like, and that's okay.
That's what a relationship and partnership is.
But usually it's not, in most cases, this dramatic shift where it's going to permanently change. And Big Nung is going to be under Little Nung's more care, right? Because, again, she's a person who likes being in control. So I think maybe that freaks her out a little bit, too, that she's like, I won't be in control at some point. Like, I have to give you all the control as just how aging works and stuff. So I wonder if that, like, psychs her out a bit. It makes her more terrified. Because that is big. It's not nothing.
That would make sense.
Yeah. And another thing I love about this conversation, if you notice, throughout, like, Big Nung's terrified. She's clearly not okay. But Little Nung doesn't panic during this conversation. She very calmly talks Big Nung through this. Like, she does all the things. She gently holds her hand and demonstrates that she can be a caretaking person for Big Nung. And she's very patient while Big Nung processes this thing that's clearly freaking her out. And she tells her while she's doing these things, Little Nung says, you don't have to be afraid. Like, she knows she's scared. And it's amazing that Big Nung has gotten to the place where she, like, feels comfortable even showing she's scared to Little Nung. That's a big step in and of itself for a person like Big Nung with her particular trauma and stuff. So that's even that is big of her. So Little Nung ends this conversation by pet naming Big Nung with the number 2 most precious pet name, where she says, like, you're my dearest. And I forget the actual words, but, like, that's basically what she says. And again, Big Nung stares at Little Nung in disbelief that, like, this the perfect human is standing right in front of her, basically. Because think about it, over the past, like, 24 hours, Big Nung's been feeling away, basically. She's scared. She's ready to bolt from the whole situation because it's very overwhelming for her. And she felt very alone with those dark feelings when she was trying to process them for the first time. So what did she do? She orchestrated this entire evening to show Little Nung why she feels this way. But what ended up happening? Little Nung happened, which happens a lot, where she just does things that, like, throws Big Nung off because she's like, I didn't expect you to do any of these things. So Little Nung stepped up, told her everything she needed to hear, and took care of her in this moment. And despite the turmoil she feels, Big Nung listened to what Little Nung was saying. Like, she also didn't dismiss Little Nung. She didn't argue back with her to, like, be like, no, I'm right, you're wrong. She also was respectful in the scene and listened to what Little Nung was saying. And I think it was evident here as well that there's still a part of Big Nung that feels unworthy of this type of pure devotion that Little Nung is constantly giving her. But there is a much bigger part of Big Nung, I think, that has always craved, quote, deep love like this. So she's kind of still, like, waging that war a little bit. But, like, do I even deserve this person?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big part. We've talked about how this is her first love, but, like, this is the first person who has truly loved her and seen her. Like, Sam, yeah, she loved her, but it's not in a way that she truly felt seen.
Right.
Like, this is a person who understands all of her completely, not expecting something from her as well, because Sam was always just trying to keep her family whole. So there was always, like, talk to her, try to do this. No, Little Nung is for her. Like, she's like, what do you need? And she sees her, and she's still trying to get used to it.
Yeah, and the big thing too is that, like, Big Nung lets Little Nung see her. That's the other thing. Because, like, with Sam, I feel like she was always like, I'm your big sister. I have to be the perfect one. So I think she never fully showed Sam who she was because of their environment and who Nung was. Nung was number 1. She's the oldest. Like, she had to be a certain way around Sam. And so I think even when they got out of that, and now they're trying to forge their own, like, strengthen/forge a new type of sister bond with each other, I think there's still that reluctance from Big Nung to, like, be fully honest with Sam sometimes, because, like, I feel like, you know, even in the scene, she feels like she can't be sometimes because she's trying to break that habit. It just takes time, like, based on how she was raised, and, like, the walls that she built were so huge and thick, and, like, they're still kind of you know.
I think the pool scene was probably the first time that she really let Sam see her. But Sam wasn't used to it at that point, where she made things more of a joke. So it did have to be Mon seeing it. So really, it's still Little Nung being the person to see her the most.
Yeah. And I think because of her trauma, I probably said this a million times, but I'll die on the hill. I think Big Nung has a difficult time accepting love. And I think it's something she's always going to struggle with. But over time, she'll get better at it. Like, she's better in this scene than we've seen her previously. And I think that, to your point, that they are perfect for each other, I think that's true because Big Nung needs somebody like Little Nung who's so persistent to get through to her. especially when she's trapped in her own thoughts, because she's a person that isolates herself and gets very internal with her thoughts, and it's hard to break through. So what did Little Nung do in the scene? She did all the things to like pull Big Nung out of her thoughts. That's step number one. And then once she's out of them, then Big Nung is able to listen to what Little Nung is saying. So she needs somebody like this. And it's because Little Nung is so persistent, which in the beginning was like annoying, but like she needs somebody like that. Like she does. I think that she wanted that, despite being like, wow, you're so persistent. I think she was also like, wow, you're so persistent. I think she likes that. It's the flattery of like, wow, you like me so much that you like won't give up no matter what. That's part of the game. But like,
she really did need someone to keep telling her that they love her too, even if she thought it was her like just throwing it around. Like, no, it's because you are loved, and she's just not used to being loved.
Right. It's hard for her to accept it. Exactly. Okay, so back to this scene. At this point, Big Nung still hasn't said anything, but Little Nung can tell she's getting through to Big Nung by judging by the way that Big Nung is like looking at her. And Little Nung in this scene, I love this. This is probably one of my favorite kisses they ever have, because it's very different from anything else. Little Nung in this scene is the queen of consent. So what does she do? Big Nung still hasn't said anything. So Little Nung slowly starts looking at Big Nung's lips, like asking, can I kiss you? And like when Big Nung doesn't, she does it like twice. So then she leans in and like initiates a kiss. And it's a comfort kiss is what it is. And what's important to note is that like Little Nung is usually not the one who initiates kisses with them. She does do it, but it's rare. And to me, I've noticed that she is usually the one that initiates stuff, like in pivotal moments. Like, for example, 106, when like Big Nung, it's usually when Big Nung's upset, honestly. When Big Nung was upset, and like she was doing it to get Big Nung out of her grief, and it worked. And here she is kind of doing that again, but it's more so like not because she's grieving, but to, you know, hammer home the point that like, I love you no matter what. I love you when you're at your like lowest, and when you feel like you're not perfect, you're still perfect to me. That kind of thing. It's kind of what she's saying with this without saying anything. And what's important in this scene is that like at first Big Nung doesn't move. It's just Little Nung kissing her. And then like she's kind of like just letting it happen, which is a lot like their first kiss. But then it's like, Big Nung, you can't keep lying to yourself about how you feel. And you can't keep lying to yourself about this relationship, what it means to you. And if you notice, in the beginning, her eyes are open. Okay, while Little Nung's kissing her. But it's not a one-sided thing. So she doesn't stay still. And so eventually, she does close her eyes and then kisses Little Nung back. And to me, what she's saying, without saying anything, is she's accepting everything Little Nung just told her. Like, it's at first it was like kind of shocking to hear all this stuff, even though Little Nung said this a million times. Still, it's hard for Big Nung to accept this kind of devotion, like I've said. So like the kiss kind of represents the way she feels too, where it's like Little Nung demonstrating her devotion, Big Nung being like, I don't know if I can accept this, because why would anybody love me like this? But then she does accept it and like kisses Little Nung back. And when it happens, we transition into one of those like slow motion things that keeps happening in season 1, indicating this is a pivotal moment and like core memory for Big Nung. And truly, this might just be my favorite kiss they share, because it's a kiss that means comfort and acceptance, and it's not just like, I don't know, it's really beautiful. And I love that Big Nung kisses her back to show that this is a mutual relationship. It's not this one-sided thing that we've seen for much of the show, where it's like Little Nung constantly persisting Big Nung, pursuing her, and Big Nung kind of like being dismissive. It's like, it's mutual at this point. It's very mutual. All right, do you have anything to add about this kiss before we move on to the end?
I don't.
Damn, Kaitlynn. It's such a good kiss. It's cute.
I don't know. It's just I don't know.
It's not just a kiss.
No. I don't have anything about the kiss.
It's a pivotal moment.
Itself.
Okay. All right. So the kiss itself, it's short and sweet, but when Little Nung pulls back, Big Nung no longer has those hovering tears anymore. So again, demonstrating like why this was important, because now Big Nung's not scared. She was fully swept up in this moment that they were sharing.
And this is home. Together.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a coming home moment. Exactly. Right. So, see, you did have something to say about the kiss. All right. But after it ends, like, Big Nung is so swept up, she doesn't pull back. She, like, hovers in Little Nung's personal space, like, lingering, like she doesn't want to move away from her, because, yes. And they make eye contact for one glorious second before homophobia ruins everything. Where Chet comes back and yells, "Hey, Big Nung."
Because, of course, homophobia has to come back. That is Chet's new name, homophobia.
Yeah, and I hate that we had 2 cliffhangers in a row with Chet.
Yeah, that kind of sucks.
I don't like that. It really sucks, doesn't it? Should probably stop that. All right, and that's the end of the episode. Big Gay Energy Award. Little Nung being comforting Big Nung at the end.
That's what I was thinking.
The big gay energy.
Because that is some big gay energy.
That, and also the way she, like, played everybody at the dinner table. I think Little Nung just wins.
I got one. No, I got one.
Okay.
Little Nung defending Yui.
That was also really good. Yeah. I appreciate that she's that friend that does that. All right. Kaitlynn, what's your secret word?
I don't know what this word means. If you made it this far in the episode, we want to know. Use the secret word in a comment or review. Today's secret word is... Oh, I wrote down the definition. Good job, Kaitlynn. The secret word today is flibbertigibbet. And it means a frivolous, flighty, or excessively talkative person.
Do with that what you will.
I have never heard that word in a conversation.
Why would you? All right, so any final thoughts before we move on to Taylor Swift? We're ending this with Taylor Swift. We haven't forgotten.
I do have a Taylor Swift song. I just don't know all the lyrics, but I think it applies to this.
All right, so what is it?
The Bolter. I think that's for Big Nung right now. Because she just keeps trying to bolt. Instead of... She's like, it's better to just let go than...
That's definitely Big Nung, for sure. That's a good one.
And I'll look into it, and if it makes sense fully, I'll do what we're about to do for that song later.
Okay, so yeah. So if you don't like Taylor Swift, leave now. What we're going to do is transition into my Taylor Swift song for this episode, and really I brought it up in the last episode too, which is Cardigan, because that is literally a Big Nung and Little Nung song. It's basically this whole episode, okay? So if you're not into Taylor Swift and don't want to, like, actually get into this, turn this off right now, because we're going to be here for the rest of the episode. Because it's our podcast and we can do whatever we want. So what we're going to do is Patreon. We're going to watch the music video together because it's relevant to what we're going to talk about. And then for everybody else, I can't do that because we'll get sued by Taylor Swift.
Yes.
That bitch has so much money. We'll be shut down in a heartbeat. So after we watch this with Patreon, we'll come back and talk about everything. So
let's do it.
Let's do it.
Woo!
Because the actual, again, the music video comes from the artist who knows the lyrics the best. And the visual actually is important. Because I think this song is very much, it lines up with them a lot. So let's get into why that is. So I can't keep in the commentary while it's playing, so I'm sorry. So let's get into it. So the beginning is very much like Little Nung's point of view. Like, the vintage tee, brand new phone, high heels on the cobblestone. When you were young, they assume you know nothing. Sequin smile, black lipstick, sensual politics. When you are young, they assume you know nothing. So the opening scene in the music video is Taylor all alone in an aging home playing a broken piano. Because if you look at it, there's broken keys and stuff. So the setting is, this is reality. It's what reality looks like. It's got a bunch of imperfections, but it is what it is. It comes with its hardships, right? And for the person in the video, the escape from reality is music. So with her music, Taylor discovers beauty so wonderful, it's fantastical. Hence that when she's playing, she stops singing and sees that ethereal gold coming from the piano that leads her into a fantasy meadow. Okay, so how does this relate to the blank? So this is like Little Nung's point of view in a way. So in reality, Little Nung is constantly being judged by her age, right? When you're young, they assume you know nothing. And throughout the show, Little Nung has been dismissed by so many people for being young and not really knowing what she wants. Like, let the older and wiser adults choose your path for you, right? Over and over again. Meanwhile, in this episode in particular, Little Nung points out the ignorance of the older adults. Like, she did it with Chet and Big Nung on the car driving scenes. So when it comes to, quote, like, sensual politics, like Gen Z's point of view on queerness and her identity, she's like, you guys are not the ones in the right here. So she's in this reality that's not perfect. It has its hardships. What's Little Nung's escape from all of that? Big Nung.
Especially like, in the palace.
Yeah, but it's Big Nung is like music, okay, in the metaphor. So then the next verse. So, but I knew you, dancing in your Levi's, drunk under a streetlight. I knew you, hand under my sweatshirt, baby kiss it better. And when I felt like I was an old cardigan under someone's bed, you put me on and said I was your favorite. So this is still Little Nung's point of view. So Little Nung in this episode tells Big Nung that she fell for her the first time they met, and the feeling has never changed. So Little Nung, to me, has spent her entire life as a cardigan under a bed, right? She's been alone, ignored, trapped. And when Big Nung entered her life, it was like following that ethereal gold into the piano. Like we see their meeting later. Her whole life changed once she found that thing. And with Big Nung, life feels like a dream. She said it before. It's fantastical. It feels perfect. As long as they're alone, like Taylor playing her piano alone in the fantastical meadow. So in the fantasy with Big Nung, Little Nung feels loved, comforted, which is something she's never had really before. We've seen her home life, right? So hence the like hand her under sweatshirts, baby kiss it better kind of stuff. She feels taken care of by Big Nung in all the ways. But between the two of them, the person who fell deepest into that fantasy is Big Nung, actually. So then we start switching into Big Nung's point of view. So the next lines are, a friend to all is a friend to none. Chase two girls, lose the one. When you are young, they assume you know nothing. So Big Nung struggles with making decisions. We've definitely seen that over and over again. And in this episode in particular, she's failing to balance what she wants with what other people expect of her, i.e., be with Little Nung in the fantasy, like stay in the meadow, versus face the judgment of others in reality, like the brewing storm. But she learns in this episode that if she tries to please everybody, she fails to please anyone, including herself. Hence the line, a friend to all is a friend to none. In this episode, Big Nung feels defeated in her attempt to, quote, chase two girls, i.e., which is to date Little Nung and gain acceptance from others. So she comes to the conclusion that she's going to have to sacrifice one of those things. And she chooses to take the route of wisdom and not youth, because when you're young, they assume you know nothing. And like, so Big Nung, that's when she's like, hey, look, the gap's too great, kind of thing. With me so far?
Yes. No, you perfectly make sense of all of this, and I'm just like, damn, this is perfect.
Okay. It is. This is their song. All right, so let's get into the next section. But I knew you, playing hide and seek and giving me your weekends. I knew you, your heartbeat on the high line, once in 20 lifetimes. And when I felt like I was an old cardigan under someone's bed, you put me on and said I was your favorite. So we're still in Big Nung's point of view for this. So ultimately, this is difficult for Big Nung because the journey she's gone through with Little Nung was magical and fantastical. Like, this was her escape also. And although it doesn't seem like it, Big Nung, quote, chased Little Nung in her own way. She waited for Little Nung to show up at her art stall. She waited for Little Nung to, like, tag along with her to work, even though she's, like, pretending she didn't want it. And she found time to see her outside of school. So she was, quote, playing hide and seek, and Little Nun gave her her weekends, which she still does, right? Which gets in the university. And while Big Nun wanted more, she would never outwardly ask for that. She had to accept the limits of their fantasy. Because as she got to know Little Nun and understand what her own feelings meant, she realized how rare this relationship is. All of that culminates in the last scene of the episode when Little Nun pours her heart out, which is your heart beat on the high line once in 20 lifetimes, because this is rare and it's real. Because the reality is that Big Nun feels like an old Cardigan too. Like they're both Cardigans in this metaphor. She feels like no one's worthy of her love and secretly feels like she's not worthy of love in return. But in walked Little Nun. She gravitated to Big Nun under the bed, tucked away in an unassuming art stall, and she put her on and called Big Nun her favorite. Can I move in? And for Big Nun, this changed the trajectory of her entire life.
It did. Because I think I see the most, like I see all of this, but like especially the her being the old Cardigan, just like discarded. Everyone counted her out basically. Like the grandmam didn't, like basically disowned her because like she left, and now here's this one finding who she is, and it's just so cute.
And they do it for each other. Yeah. All right, so the next verse. To kiss in cars and downtown bars was all we needed. You drew stars around my scars, but now I'm bleeding. So we're still in Big Nun's point of view. So what happened? With Little Nun putting her on as the Cardigan, they started a real relationship. But it was one they kept hidden from the judgment of others. So at first, it was going great. They had stolen moments, was, quote, all they needed. They learned from each other, processed trauma and grief, the you drew stars around my scars line. But fantasy's not reality. So eventually, Little Nun and Big Nun have to face reality and all its imperfections, like walking into the eye of the storm. And for Big Nun, that was her breaking point. And now I'm bleeding. Hence Big Nun's freak out in this particular episode when that reality hit her like a storm. So like in the music video, what happens? The protagonist goes from Fantasyland into the eye of a storm, basically. Just is hit with reality really hard, trying desperately to cling to the thing that's their escape, right? The piano, the music.
I also feel like it's Little Nun clinging to the piano as well, like trying to hold on to Big Nun, trying to keep her into this relationship and not escaping, like bolting.
And that's literally the next verse.
Damn it, I'm sorry.
No, you're coming with me on the journey. That's fine. All right, so the next verse. 'Cause I knew you, stepping on the last train, marked me like a bloodstain. I knew you, tried to change the ending, Peter losing Wendy. I knew you, leaving like a father, running like water. And when you are young, they assume you know nothing. So this is when we transition back to Little Nun, like you were picking up on. So sometimes Little Nun feels in this relationship like she's trapped in a roiling ocean, clinging desperately to her feelings for Big Nun. She's been through countless situations where Big Nun runs away, scared, leaving like a father, running like water. And Big Nun has hurt her, like really hurt her. Let us all recall 106, the final scene. She marked me like a bloodstain. And now here's Big Nun trying to use their age gap to separate them in this episode. So Big Nun tried to change the ending of them being together, Peter losing Wendy. But Little Nun knows Big Nun does all this because she's scared. And she knows Big Nun is scared because what they have is real. And Little Nun knew from day one all of this. But Big Nun never fully believed it because when you're young, they assume you know nothing. So then, next verse. But I knew you'd linger like a tattoo kiss. I knew you'd haunt all of my what-ifs. The smell of smoke would hang around this long, 'cause I knew everything when I was young. I knew I'd curse you for the longest time. chasing shadows in the grocery line. I knew you'd miss me once the thrill expired, and you'd be standing on my front porch light. And I knew you'd come back to me. You'd come back to me, etc. So Little Nung, while Little Nung is unwavering in her feelings, she knows Big Nung struggles with them. Because Little Nung loves Big Nung so much, she's willing to do whatever it takes and wait patiently for Big Nung to come around. Because Little Nung, quote, knew everything when she was young. And that's why she has the maturity in this last scene in 204. She knew once Big Nung calmed down and wasn't scared, she would be able to see things clearly. And she was confident Big Nung would come back to her. And then the final verse. And when I felt like I was an old cardigan under someone's bed, you put me on and said I was your favorite. This is both of them, okay? So back to the music video. When Taylor emerges from the piano back into reality, into that room she started in, right? She's soaking wet. Like she wasn't when she went into the piano, she was when she came out. Indicating that this fantastical experience she just had fundamentally changed her. And she experiences reality different now, because now when she comes out into it, she's like cold and shivering. It's different from when she started. But the character, having gone through that, learned from this experience. And so she grabs the cardigan, puts it on, and instantly feels at peace. You see her whole demeanor changes, her face changes, that kind of thing. So Big Nung and Little Nung's secret relationship that they kept all to themselves fundamentally changed who they are. When they enter back into reality as a couple, it's impossible to undo what they've experienced together. This is why both Big Nung and Little Nung are so frustrated when the, quote, fake suitors come about, especially Little Nung's suitors in this episode. And when Little Nung's family is like pestering her to date a man. The two of them are so far past that it's impossible to play pretend and keep up appearances. We saw them struggle with that in this scene. It's getting harder and harder for them to do that. But still, even now, the thing that brings both of them comfort is each other. That's also something that fundamentally has changed. They are each other's cardigans. And the episode ends, 204, with Little Nung putting on the cardigan and Big Nung feeling at peace. And that is why Cardigan is a Big Nung and Little Nung song and is the song for this episode.
I love your brain, Theora. You see so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Yay! So if you didn't have an appreciation for that song and how amazing the lyrics actually are, go listen to Cardigan. It's one of her best songs, in my opinion.
I want everyone to give Theora praise in the comments for her brain. Because Theora's brain is amazing, and she sees so much, and it's admirable. I'm just saying.
I don't even like poetry, but this is basically like reading a poem and being like, what are you actually trying to tell me with these lines?
And that is what I hated in English.
I also hated that in English class, but now I do it for fun. I was like, oh, it's kind of fun to be like, what are you trying? I look at it as a game. I'm like, what is the author really trying to say with this? Because, like, there's more than just the words on the paper.
I can do it now more that I've met you.
Yeah, it just takes practice. Anyway, so that's Cardigan. Cardigan is the song for this episode. That's all we got. We'll be back next time to jump into the final 2 episodes. I can't believe we only have 2 left.
We're not actually going to cover both in the next episode.
No.
It's going to take 4 more episodes.
Right. Don't worry.
And then we have a special 5th episode. So there's still 5 more after this.
Yeah, so we can't help ourselves with Blank, but we are approaching the end of Blank the series. And if you've made it this far, you're the real hero here. Let us know what Thai girl love show you'd like us to cover like this, in depth, because we're still trying to figure out what that's going to be. Patreon has already expressed their opinions, but I want to hear from all of you. Just let us know what you'd like us to cover next, because obviously we can't cover all of them because it takes several months to cover one show.
Yes. Also, if it hasn't come out yet, just wait till it comes out, because maybe you won't want us to do it. But I love like the people who are like, this show that hasn't aired yet, we kind of need it to have aired.
I mean, by the time you get this, it might have aired.
It might have. Yeah, that's true.
So just let us know. We want to hear from you and want to hear what you guys want to hear us go into, basically. So leave it in the comments. And until next time, hydrate for lesbian Jesus. Put on your
gay it
cardigan.
up all over. What?
And put on your cardigans.
And gay it up all over the place in your cardigan.
Yes! Okay. Bye.
Bye.
And with that, we've been Big Gay Energy. If you like this episode, check out all our other episodes right here on YouTube.
Please like, leave a comment below, and subscribe for more amazing super gay content.